second year of ITP student and senator of Tisch graduate student organization, and also I'm Runway student ambassador.
Hello everyone, my name is Anita. I'm a junior undergraduate from NYU Shanghai, majoring in interactive media arts, and I'm also the NYU Shanghai senator in student assembly.
Thank you everyone for coming to this event. It's co-hosted by Runway ML, Tisch graduate student organization, and also NYU Shanghai student government. You might have noticed AI is spreading to every field, especially to the creative field. Anyone can create, but now how do we protect the value of creators? Today's forum will gather expertise from educational creators and AI industry to discuss responsible AI use and how to preserve originality and deeper value in creations. Today's event will be recorded and uploaded to NYU Stream platform. And first, let's welcome Runway ML speaker Anna Isabel de Bouquet.
Hi everyone, so happy to be here today. Who here has already heard of Runway? Okay, nice, cool, good representation. And who here uses Runway or uses other generative AI tools? I will never practice. Okay, awesome, nice, great. Okay, so for those who don't know what Runway is, it's a generative media and research company. So we develop a bunch of generative AI tools. So that's image generation tools, video and audio. And we partner with a lot of students. We're really happy to be partnering with you guys here. We have a film festival every year. I'm going to show you some of that as well. And a bunch of different commissions, things that are working with the community, initiatives that are working with the community, something that we're very passionate about. And that comes from also kind of the founding state of our company. So what Runway is really it's a firm that was created by creatives, for creatives. It's not a kind of like tagline. Our three founders met at NYU actually, they were at ITP. So they all are both creatives and technologists, and everyone who works at the company has a mixed creative and tech background. So before I worked for Runway, I led a motion design team. I was a creative director at an agency, and then did went over, thought I was going to learn virtual reality, went to my master's at Parsons, and then took a machine learning class, fell in love, and was like, this is amazing and really complex. Like one of the chief reasons that I thought it was so fascinating is because there are a lot of complexities around the fair use of it, the creative use of it. But one of the things that I feel very strongly about is that these creative tools that are being developed in this AI space are actually really not in a space where they're replacing anyone. It's really a very empowering tool. And I say that as someone who has felt empowered by these tools themselves. Okay. I'm going to bring you back a little bit in where we are in the AI space. So this was in 2021. So I would say that's 1 or 2 years before the launch of ChatGPT, just as like putting us. And this is the first AI video ever created. This is by Runway. At this now, you look at it and you're like, what am I looking at? You're looking at an orange that is rolling through space. Very pixelated, right? Like very shoddy at the time. This was completely mind-blowing. This was like, oh my God, we managed to do this, right? This took, I don't know how many hundreds of tries to even get something that looked this bad, right? Then we move forward. We're going to move, 2 years from this. This was our first commercial generative AI model. This was Gen 2. This is all text to video. So you're starting to see some clips that look really realistic, but you're seeing still some artifacting, right? Like some jumps in the frames and everything, but still already in 2 years, massive jump from where we were before. And now we're going to jump forward to the model that we released this year, and this is Gen 4. So in a couple of years, massive leaps in what we can do. But the main thing about that is kind of what I want you to pay attention to in that video is the physics, right? The light, the reflections, everything that you can get that can tell a more powerful story, but also the variance of styles that you saw. You saw some photorealistic things, some more anime style things. We've got really like a whole range of support, and the idea behind that is allow anyone to tell whatever story they want to tell from whatever medium they want to tell it. So these are a couple of the technologies that went into this. This is our image generation feature, so you see all the like variants of stars. You can create collages, you can create kind of like crazy little pig images with gold teeth. You can go as far and as close to reality as you want to, and kind of go back in space to do things that are really themed at a different time and now. Gen 4, that was the video model that I was showing you. These are all different stories and short films that were produced internally by our creative teams, and they're available for view on our website. This is our newest video model that was released, I want to say, a month ago, maybe a month and a half. Basically, it's direct in-video editing, so you're able to take a clip, for example, and generate new scenes from it, new camera angles, completely that didn't exist at the time. So you can think about it if you're a student, a low-budget creator or anything, and you have one camera on scene the day of, you can just regenerate different angles from it. You can do style transfer, you can do removal objects. I could film all of you in this scene and say, oh, damn it, like, you know, somebody had a jacket on the chair that I really didn't want in the scene. Okay, clip it out, don't need to reshoot the entire scene. I can change all the colors of these green chairs to red, for example, to make it more like a movie theater. Like, we can really have a lot of control over the scene and the direction of where we want to go things. We can remove people from scenes, we can add people, do all this different stuff. Then this is Act 2, this is my favorite feature on Runway. This is basically character tracking animation without needing, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings and you see Gollum with his millions of dots in the face. This is essentially that, but without any of the dots. So you can film this from your phone, from your computer, at home, whatever, and then create a character design, and you can act out an entire movie from your own bedroom, from your own classroom. It's something that I've used a lot and I find really, really fun. And then in terms of like the partnerships that we do, we have a lot of big partnerships amongst there's a media agency, Lionsgate, obviously film studio, and AMC Networks. We really partner with a lot of big names in the cinema and the creative space to develop these tools also for the intended audience. These are a bunch of the different films that we've also produced throughout the years, like these short films that I was talking about earlier, and some of the films also that have shown at places like AIFF, which is our film festival. Last year that was held at Lincoln Center. Really encourage you guys to come next year. It's really exciting, it's really cool. We did also a music video for J Balvin that was premiered at the film festival, and we had people like Harmony Korine who were judging the film festival. So in terms of like what this looks like, I'm going to zoom through this because I actually want to show you some like live short films, and then I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about how this could look. But basically, just a bunch of different things that you can do with the tool to situate us in the space. And when I show you this thing, it's basically just to give you an understanding of where this could fall into. But really, the thing with AI that I find the most powerful is that it actually disrupts the production process entirely. It disrupts kind of like the entire cast process. You no longer need to be just an actor or a writer or a director. You really can put all of this together and build out all these different things. I say that because I had a lifelong dream of being an actress and then being a director, and very honestly, I was too afraid of it. I was like, oh my god, I'm going to need to write my script, and I'm going to need to show it to people, and they're going to need to think it's good, and then go on and then commit to spending all this time with me. And instead I was like, great, I can develop all these concepts, I can show it to people when I'm confident in it, and then I can actually build something out that has a lot of like gut and story. And you can go from things like create things for post-production that you'll move back into early development for another project, anything else. So one of the things, this is a mood board that I generated. This is the only real image over here. Actually, all of this is generated, but the image that I started with was this image. And then I popped it back into the model and I said, okay, now generate something else in this environment that looks like it comes from the same scene. And I built out this entire campaign without needing, like, sure, it's great, like I love Pinterest, spend a lot of time on all these different platforms to search for ideas, but this is another way to create ideas that look like what you have in mind, and then you can immediately use in production because then you own the images that you've generated as well, and because you know that they're unique because in AI, no two outputs are ever the same. You can do this for storyboarding. The great thing about this is that I can design a whole sketch storyboard. I can't draw to save my life, so this is a wonderful tool for me. So that I can generate my storyboard, and then I can immediately turn that into a photorealistic look. But I can also do creative ideation in one shot, and one day I can be like, okay, show me this in 3D, show me this in, you know, this photorealistic style, in sketch style, whatever. And I can kind of go through whatever ideas I have, and then with one click more, turn that into video and get this animated output. I can do some screen tests. This is our creative director, Jamie, that we've recast and just put into a car over here. We put him in a bunch of different scenes. You can put any of yourselves in any area, movie, anything that you're kind of thinking about. We can do location previs, so we can do things such as like changing the weather in a scene, which is really powerful. So you can think about having to shoot a scene, for example, and then you're like, okay, I want snow or rain or things that are really expensive in an actual film shoot, and you can just do that yourself, or you can do something that is 6 months out and shoot it over the summer. Another thing here is just like placing an object that we put in a bunch of different scenes. You get all that consistency. There's kind of been this like balance in the time with AI, being able to make really, really cool outputs, but that weren't necessarily controllable. And we're moving into a space now with AI, just to situate us again a little bit, where it's, you get all this amazing creative freedom, and you can make things that are completely out of the box, but you can now actually control the very timing, the placement of it, the way that it's going to interact with your scene. Post-production, so here's one example. The story I like to tell a lot is kind of the fear, again, like I get it, like I'm sure many people in this room feel this way, and outside of this room, this fear of, okay, well, this is all wonderful, I'm seeing that this is all powerful, what does it mean for me if I'm creative, what does it mean for how that's going to impact my work and the work I like to do? So when I worked at the agency, we served a lot of luxury clients, so we tried to do a lot of really out there shoots, and I always really wanted to work with 3D artists. 3D is really expensive, and it's a very time-intensive process. Every single time that we hired a 3D artist, we weren't able to hire him full-time into the team, too expensive, so we only could have him as a freelancer, and we ended up spending the entire budget on the pitch for the project, and then the client would say, this is great, but I'm not putting that much money for a future one, so it was like we had to revert away from our 3D pitch and go and do something else. Since AI has come to the play, like I'm actually still in contact with that agency and everything, they were able to hire that artist full-time, because now they're doing all the pre-concepting work with generative tools, with like a combination. So if you think about it, this is one thing that would have been like designed if your 3D artist is spending all this time on this, and then you're able to upload that to the tool and be like, okay, show me a close-up of his face, show me his hands. And so I can build out my entire storyboard, my pitch for this concept, and then when the project is bought, I can then go on and actually pay the artist to create it full-time, rather than wasting that in the end. This is the performance tool that I was telling you about, the Act 2. This is, again, our creative director, one of the researchers who worked on this. So again, showing you don't need a studio setting for this. Again, this ability to build out new scenes, the ability to place objects consistently in any scene, this camera control with the camera understanding kind of what the environment around it looks like. This is another thing where this first clip is the only real clip that was filmed, and then we generated new angles from it. So again, that multi-camera setup. And then you're able to work, again, with 3D assets, all these different things. Okay, this is what I was showing to you guys about object removal. This is kind of going into the nitty-gritty. And then marketing, again, what's really cool is that none of these things that you're creating are made only for one platform. You can upload any video that you've made, reformat it for social media. We all know that a lot of creativity or a lot of stories that are told are now propelled kind of through social media platforms. So you can do that both one way or the other. Okay, I want to show you a little bit of the things that were made, some of the things that I would love to invite you to participate in the future also. There's a competition called Gen 48. It's a 48-hour competition. We give you a ton of free credits basically for that 48-hour period. And we're just like, cool, make a short film in that time. Really amazing the kind of stuff that people come up with every time. And the reason I want to show you this is that when we talk about like AI, we talk, one thing often is like replacement of jobs that I touched on a little bit. And the other thing is that fear that it's going to dilute the creative power that we've got. I think that you guys have all seen the AI slop that exists online, right? That is not amazing creative technology. But then there's some things that come out of this that are absolutely mind-blowing. And that is because at the end of the day, what remains true, whether you have a great camera or a bad camera, an AI tool or a pen, is actually the story that you're telling and the power of your story and the emotion that is held within your story. So I'm going to show you this one. It's one of my favorite films that came out this year.
Packed up to go? All right. Who just won the last ping pong match? This did. Does it taste like corn?
Okay, let's see. Where do I start? Right, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna jot down the highlights. And, you know, I may embellish here and there, so don't expect this to be totally accurate, but it'll be close enough. So, my childhood. Well, I remember we had a lot of cats. I mean, a lot of cats. Like, a lot. And there was one big blue one we called Big Jim. He was great.
Potato chips, what else?
In the summer, we'd explore Granddaddy's farm. And in the winter too, but that's when the ice trolls would come out. They were friendly though.
Here we go.
And I remember seeing a movie when I was a kid that made me scared of sharks for years, but I eventually got over that. I played video games like most kids. You know, we had the latest consoles. But I got out too. You know, my brother and I, we played soccer at Mr. Sprinkle's Donut Park every year. And we lived near the water, so we'd catch crabs now and then down at Lake Tangerine.
What you got, man?
Our new baby crab.
We'd vacation at the beach sometimes, and I remember one year all the rubber duckies got turned around or lost or whatever, and they all washed up on the shore. And I think that was the same year as Pronto's comet. When it flew over, everything felt like a disco.
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to be a cowboy when I grew up, but I had a hard time riding horses, so I changed my mind and decided I wanted to be a wizard. Every day I would practice my powers at home, until eventually I got pretty good. Maybe too good.
He was mean to you, wasn't he? And what happened?
I accidentally turned my brother into a toad one day, but we didn't really mind. But I swore off my powers after the incident with the neighbors, and that was it. So, to avoid legal trouble, I ran away from home into the desert, where I found this ancient temple with a portal inside. I remember stepping inside and just walking and walking and walking. And that's it. That's all I remember. Hope that clears up any questions about your old ball. At least until the time comes. Well, good luck.
What I love about this one is we all have these childhood memories, right, that are completely distorted. And the ability to play with that, of like what is real, what isn't, and how much beauty is there in that reality versus irreality, and how important is it actually what is real or what isn't, as long as it generates emotion for myself, for the people who share that moment with me, or for the people that I'm able to present that moment to. There's a bunch of different videos that I wish that I had time to show you right now across a million different styles. I will also share those with you now afterwards so she can pass that on to you, but would recommend checking all of that out and excited to reach you guys more about any questions that you have. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing, and thank you, Runway, for supporting the event. We just wanted to announce that there's also a Runway discount. If you type in the code TischGSO, TischGSO, all in caps, you can get a $30 discount for your first month for the Pro plan. So we're going to jump to the next section, and Luna will introduce it to you.
Okay, let's start with a video first.
Have you used AI in your personal project or assignment, any kind of production?
I don't believe I have. I've used it in classes, but like they made us use it in classes. Like I never used it of my own.
I mean, I don't really see it playing that much of a role because I don't really want it to play a role. I feel like it could be used for good, but at the same time, I don't really think the ways that it's being used right now are any good. So, I mean, I just prefer to steer clear.
Yeah, I think I'm personally worried since the AI actress whole debacle has happened, because now I never thought that it could seep into our career because it's so artistic, but it's scary how far it keeps on going.
Right.
I'd say performance-wise, I'm a musical theater student, and I think it's very harmful to our art as actors, especially with the news of the new AI actress who has come to light, and there's several agencies who want to sign her.
When it comes to the future, I think it can help and worsen things, because I think AI can help you. It can help make a lot of stuff more efficient. But I think also with the use of AI, you're also kind of taking away factors from like human behavior and like creating things, allowing people to have jobs. A lot of AI can just take that away, specifically for like artists, where now you see like different types of AI are making videos so instantly and looking so good, it takes away from other people, and I think that could affect a lot.
Right. I don't use it at all for my classes.
Why is that? Do you have a reason?
The class that I teach it's drama and it's on its feet, and we have no use for computers at all.
Extensively. It has reduced time to produce something. For example, during my summer internship, I had to develop apps. So the AI that I used is Cursor. It's an IDE that helps a lot with coding. That would iteratively analyze and improve upon the errors. So before AI, what I would do is I would have to search on Stack Overflow as to have previous solutions on this error been. And
a lot, actually a lot. I've done UI UX designing. I used all the tools from Google to generate those stuff, samples, materials. Especially, they're really good at organizing some established information, like summarizing texts or constructing information structure, something like that. It does take a large portion. I mean, not the intellectual portion, but not of more of a quantitative portion of my work. The trend is obvious and it's inevitable. It cannot be prohibited. My personal opinion towards the involvement of AI will be living with it with harmony.
I will use it as a tool, so it will help me to lift some heavy and repetitive work and give me more time to focus on my creativity.
By the way, the software you are using here, Transform, is it AI too?
Yeah, it's AI transcription.
Oh.
Because I think the interview is important, so I want to answer more clearly. I mean, some important conversation, I will use the AI transcription.
You know, like, this is a very controversial issue, and a lot of people are talking about it these days, but I'm a very pro-AI person, and I'm like an evangelist of AI, and like best companions, at least for people who are like very fond of it and they use for a lot in their process, like designers, artists. I believe that a lot of people are already using like somewhat AI in the process.
How do you see AI's pros and cons?
Whatever it is, the reaction is so fast. Speed and cost is pros, and cons would be all the issues that people are talking about, the impact on the environment of like since running AI takes so much resources and a lot of water, definitely. Licensing and copyright issues, that's a big issue.
So I'm making a huge shift in mediums because AI is having an impact on photography, and therefore, and also the visual environment is so occluded with imagery. People just are overwhelmed with images coming at them, and I've noticed over the past decade that people just don't have the desire to stare at one image and analyze or think about it. It's just one blade of grass in a large field of grass, and you're asking a lot to get someone to focus. An artist, as well as a former working photographer, I just felt like there was no point in continuing. If I care about reaching people, then I need to reach them in the mediums that connect with them now. I think in terms of what AI can do for me, it's able to help me visualize what things can look like without a major commitment into any one direction. Almost like sketching. You know, I kind of had to get over the fact that I resented AI. I mean, after the kind of in-depth photography work I did, to be replaced in a year's time, it was a little painful, but it's not going back. The genie's not going back in the bottle. So instead of railing against it, I'm trying to find creative ways to use it, but not use it to actually do the real work, because that feels like cheating to me. You know, I don't. My strong point is how to connect to human beings with concept.
Yeah.
And so if I let AI drive the concept, that's immoral, in my opinion. And if I'm going to use it as a tool, I use it as a tool, not as the driving force. So I think if we're going to talk about how to be ethical, it's like, don't let AI drive the car. You drive the car. And it's just, I think we're going through a period that feels pubescent, in terms of AI. Nobody has a firm grasp on what to do, how to use it ethically, or the concern about ethics. I think it's kind of backseated behind, oh, look what we can do.
So these data, including the Google form, is what I gathered from mostly Tisch student response. Almost all of them said AI will harm their field and they don't see a future with AI merged in. But on the other side, students who have worked with technology feels like AI speed up their productivity. And for people who have no art background, they can even create artworks. In the middle point, there is artists who hates AI but have to push themselves to use it in order to talk to their audience in this highly competitive digital market. Well, how will AI evolve? How much it will consistently affect artists and creators? Is there any answer to this? Anything we can do to prevent future devaluing in our creative work happen?
All right, for that, we want to just paint a kind of landscape of opinions from our school. Next up, we will be showing a video, kind of talk with Stavros Didakis, who is a professor in NYU Shanghai, and he's a researcher and an artist that explores the technological futures through architectural augmentations and sensory environments, and his work also examines responsive ecologies and computational systems as extensions of human experience. And so, shall we? Because of time difference, we recorded it instead of doing it live.
I am Stavros Didakis. I'm a professor with NYU Shanghai Interactive Media Arts, and I teach classes in synthetic media, which is very close to the subject that we will be discussing today. Actually, I would like to begin with a project we developed last year in my course, Synthetic Media, and this project developed around a main prompt for all the students. We saw this assignment as a collective project. The project was to try to understand what is a human being from a psychoanalytical perspective and utilize various forms of artificial intelligence and machine learning systems in order to translate the results of this analysis that we did into creating images and videos and sounds and virtual reality experiences and systems that we developed also in the class. So I'll stop it here. You saw that in the video there is a display of this imagery of these animations, and currently this image you see from the virtual reality space. Analysis that we did from the data was to extract information from participants regarding their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their desires, how they spend their day, and so on. We collected a huge database of these personal diaries. From that, we extracted various elements that we visualized, first as images, which represented the superficial self, then as animated imagery that represented the emotional space of these data logs that we extracted. And here on the virtual reality space, we see the collective and the collective unconscious and the personal unconscious, elements that they seem to resonate very deeply with some of the responses we got from the participants. We shared this work last September in Linz, in Austria, where the Ars Electronica Festival takes place, which is one of the biggest art and technology festivals in the world. And I will mention one example out of my personal work very briefly. This is the installation. So this project, which is called Logical Fantastic Machine, and it comes out of a lecture from Italo Calvino, an Italian author and philosopher. During the 70s, he was discussing this lecture about hypothetical machines that they will be able to generate text, narratives, books without the need of a particular author. And these machines can endlessly generate stories. And then was the question, what is the role of the author? In this installation, I tried basically to do a machine like this, that it is able to generate continuously divergent visual and textual narratives, stories that they would be composed out of the information that would be extracted from the environment in real time. So you see these 3 robotic systems that I have with the mobile phones attached on them, and each one of them extracts different information from the environment. All of this content is communicated through the main system that is going to develop a new generation using custom models for the text and the image. And through this generation, there is also a way for the participants to evaluate the generated content. I have developed a series of analysis and rubrics and descriptions as to these main categories that I would consider important to be evaluated for the outputs, such as creativity, originality, narrative structure, like coherency, etc. So through this evaluation, the system would understand if the current image or text is considered to be creative, let's say passes a threshold. The whole system, basically, it's a real-time system, an autonomous system. So these 2 projects I just wanted to mention to contextualize my practice, both in terms of the education and the personal work. So I'm up for your questions or comments.
For AI, you need to put your own personal data to train it. So in a way, it's kind of you need to feed it to your own personal environment or living data. So which means worried about they are stealing my personal data. They don't want to use it. How they can learn to trust and collaborate with a tool, they will steal your data, something like that.
Many questions there, and I can totally understand this as I also have these discussions all the time, both with students and colleagues, and it's pretty normal to question a new technology. And this is a healthy way to respond to some new emerging paradigm. We need to be able to reflect on it and certainly question what is the role in our lives or in our practice, and not just accumulate it normally without any further questions. It's completely normal. I completely understand it. And in my practice, I work with all sorts of different technologies all the time. The project that I just shared with you includes so many different technologies, right? I can list dozens of different technologies, frameworks, disciplines even. Now, for my perspective in my work, I see it as sometimes a way to explore something new. And if it fits within a particular context, then I will utilize it to ensure that the translation of what I'm thinking is happen successfully. There can be many other cases that I will not use AI and I will use some other more conventional media to express what I want to say. So my suggestion is to whoever feels comfortable with whatever, then just adapt to that. And you don't necessarily need to feel that this is something that you really need to do. In terms of stealing the data and all of this technology, this is a big ethical issue. And I would say from in many discussions that I've had, I avoid to comment on this. Of course, I acknowledge the problem, and if someone doesn't feel comfortable, they should express themselves accordingly. For me, the way that I see it is, let's say, the way that I've seen many other technologies that have emerged over the last few years, that certainly they consist of information extracted from elsewhere, right? But still, we were able to develop our own meaningful works, make the translation that it fits our own practice, our own narratives. It comes to mind a great work from a fellow artist, Memo Acton, and the project Learning to See, which is one of the first early experimentations with machine learning. And the artist uses to feed in a real-time video of him playing on the table with some cloth or something. And then we see the image of the machine learning trained model that visualizes this input of the normal video, right, as data sets that it has been trained with. Let's say one data set would be like fire, another one will be like waves in the sea, and so on. So whatever the systems has been trained with, it's going to see the input accordingly. If I have trained my data set with images of fire, then whatever I feed into the system, the output will still be my hands moving around, but it will be like in the form of a fire, right? And this is a great representation for me to understand also how we function as humans, because we are trained systems as well, right? Whatever content you feed to a particular brain, it's going to perceive reality based on that prism. And this is really distinct the difference between cultural groups, right? For example, in China, color red is considered something different than what it is considered in Greece. Color red doesn't have the same meaning. We don't understand the same color in the same way because we are trained to learn it differently. One can be related to fortune, right? And something good, and about unification perhaps. But in Greece, that might be, let's say, represented by blue. And I want to come to the conclusion that the way we understand all of this is also based on how, as humans, have learned to approach these conditions. And it is something that it can really be, I don't want to say, we can definitely consider this as a matter of perception, that if years pass, we will be able to perceive a particular technology or trend differently if we train our minds and ourselves within that specific direction. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm saying that this usually is what happens. And in terms of the data privacy, I would say it is a matter of perception. I see people that they are pro this and some other people that they are against this, right? So I will not take sides here. I can understand both groups, but my approach here would be whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you feel this is ethical for you and you would like to work with that. And one last, let's say, on a parenthesis, it is also to consider how much of these systems you're able to personalize them. You can develop your own machine learning systems. You can develop your own models. You can train your own images out of that. Many of my projects, I have been training systems with the students as well. So it's like something unique in a sense.
Because how AI is kind of challenging expertise and technical processes of making art and making works, what is us as creatives, what is our irreplaceable role? Because I guess in a world with AI, you kind of get lost about what you should focus on. How can we kind of redefine the value of our work?
It's a great question, and again, a very important one. And this is something that has pushed me to develop some generative AI projects. On the first place was out of frustration, exactly what you are highlighting in your question, how easy you can generate things, right? And of course, you can generate things very, very easily. The more you analyze the topic and you investigate the topic and you dwell in the topic, learn more about it, start engage with more technical things, you will realize that in order to create something that it belongs to you, right, to your creative, it's not that easy. It includes a lot of complications. So when I started doing my experimentations a few years ago with the first GTP models and some other stable diffusion libraries, then I realized that it is the one world that we're talking about, the commercial applications that can really automate everything and can make it really fun. And for some people, it is amazing tools, right? I have lots of friends, and here there's a very big AI film community. Lots of people, they are very interested about films and they use all of these commercial applications and they are very happy to use it, excited, and they create some really cool results. So I'm happy for them. There is one problem for all of these commercial applications. It's very difficult to implement them within an educational context because you need to, purchase credits. Sometimes you don't have the funds to purchase these credits for all the students. And besides that, it's very difficult to, let's say, complete a 14-week course, multiple lectures, and do only prompt engineering. Maybe some shorter courses that could be more suitable. I haven't done any shorter courses, so I don't know how that would work. I know that this happens a lot with workshops that they take place outside. Here in Shanghai, creators will do workshops, and in a couple of hours, you can create your own short film, for example. Now, what is the value of this? Certainly, even if we see the commercial applications, there are many AI film festivals all over the place. And actually, I recently saw one announcement for $1 million awards in prices. And it seems to be something that the industry is looking for, mainly advertising companies and, of course, tech companies. They're quite interested to kind of these trends. And for creators like me, the way that I see it, they're very happy to do that, right? So this is on the one hand. Now, on the other hand, in my own practice and the practice that I follow into my classes and with my students and other colleagues, the value that I see in my work is on touching on things that you cannot easily do with these commercial applications. Like, that is the challenging thing. Like in a system as the one I showed you, we're talking about dozens of thousands of lines of code into my project that I showed you. It's a very complicated project. You have multiple agents, multiple models, communicating in real time, utilizing like an offline resources, coordinating with other systems. It's very complicated. So in a system like this gives me pleasure because I know that basically I'm the author, right? 100%, not 100%, I would say 90% because there can be like parts of unexpected computational processes that I'm not aware of. And this is the value that I see on this other end. And what I also see in like art festivals and conferences within the art and technology, I see also artworks that they are not just simply mid-journey images that they produced and put in some posters and show them out there. They are works that are extremely complicated. Even with the advanced computational infrastructures that we have at the moment, that we can automate lots of different things, right? Still, the works that they are out there, I would say they are as complicated technically and very deep conceptually as you would find 10, 20, 50 years ago, right? I don't see any difference. If not, I see a progress. So I'm to summarize with one word, it's to identify the practices for each one of us that we feel inspired and kind to these directions. But there are like amazing people and projects and works that they can be extremely inspiring also, as we say, utilizing machine learning and AI.
Exactly like what you mentioned, big company, they're pushing lots of money for commercial, let creator to create something use AI. But like question brought up again, like is good they are doing is really good for the society? Should we question things about that? That is also brought up to different structure of AI like compared to China and US.
Obviously, I'm speaking from more of like an NYU Shanghai perspective, and because of like our unique kind of position between US and China, and maybe from your own experiences in other places, what are some things that you have noticed? Like what kind of concerns and perspectives and kind of discussions go on in these like different places? I guess just an idea for artists to see what kind of AI landscape they would like to be in.
This might be a question that I will probably cannot answer it to an accurate degree because we are talking about my experience, right? And it might be different from the experience of another person. I do have like some good connections here in China with many universities and many art and technology companies, both for the educational practice and also the development of exhibitions and shows or investigating and writing about art and technology in general. I am aware of many art groups, either in terms of developing conceptual practice or more commercial work in design or as films, as I mentioned earlier. I can totally say one thing I've noticed is not only within these communities, but something about China in general, when there is like a new technological trend, it seems to be more easily adopted in China. And actually, I have the sense that this is also encouraged from the government and from other organizations within the society. We see it very often that, let's say a few years ago, suddenly the metaverse, new trend, and you could see immediately venues supporting like metaverse applications about technologies, new technologies being developed, new applications and exhibitions. The industry kind of like was all about it. You see it all over the media. Many companies will talk about it or they will try to adopt to it. So the same thing, of course, with AI. I can see that it is a huge initiative in China in general to make China in all sorts of AI and machine learning technologies to like push the frontier basically and to drive various aspects of society. In terms of the artistic practice, I see many people that adopt the new technologies. I'm very frequently invited either for exhibitions as a curator or a judge in some competitions. Last year I had to evaluate hundreds of submissions from students in undergraduate and graduate education that their submissions was about works related to art and technology with the use of generative AI and so on. And you could see like really amazing productions, really great works, and it feels that the adoption of the technology, it happens much easier than in the West, I would say, in general, where there is a kind of like a friction in the adoption sometimes, either through questions about ethic, or quite often it could be for being able to afford these new technologies, right? And this is like one difference that I've noticed. Things would try to happen faster in China, but also in the West, I see some of these adoptions, they could happen in often cases very successfully with a more critical perspective. And this is something that I would say the pros and cons of this comparison. So one key thing here is to consider and to study both of the approaches and both of the groups, because you can always learn something new. One last thing I would add to this question is actually I see some very interesting exhibitions happening in Beijing and Shenzhen related to new technologies, but not so much in other cities. Like you would expect that in Shanghai, we would see this happening, like as you would see in Shenzhen or Beijing, but actually we don't see that as to that degree. Like some really amazing exhibitions that I would see in Europe, as I visit more frequently Europe, it's very difficult to find them in China. So this is something I would say as a negative in our field. If, for example, we had this adoption within the art industry, better support, it would be much easier to see these artistic practices flourishing all over the city, all over Shanghai. But you don't see this very often. And this is something that I wanted to highlight. A few years ago, like perhaps like a decade ago, Shanghai was completely different within the art spaces and the possibilities that it would allow. Some really amazing shows happened during that time. I think during COVID, it was a very critical period, and there was like a significant drop of these art initiatives. Some have started to reinitiate again. So we will see where this is going. But also I want to make one other comment here. But, I had a solo exhibition 2 years ago in Tank, Shanghai, which is a quite well-known art space. They develop like amazing exhibitions and conferences and symposia and so on. And I was able to develop a solo exhibition there. This happened, sometimes it can happen faster and easier than other places in the world. Like I wouldn't be able to get this huge space in a very like famous gallery so easily. Maybe it would happen more difficult, perhaps in London, in Berlin, in New York. It would happen, but maybe in a more difficult way. So sometimes things can speed up if you know the socio-political setting. So this is something that people can keep in mind, being aware about it. It will not happen automatically, but there are ways for things to happen, to make things happen very successfully.
So any questions for Professor Stavros, you can email to gsotisch@nyu.edu. We're gonna gather the question or comments and forward to Professor Stavros. Maybe let him record another section for us. Okay, now let's welcome our first panel guest speaker.
So first one, if you guys would like to start sitting in the chairs, like the far three, we'll just like introduce you guys if you know which panel you're in. So we have Santana, is a multidisciplinary Brooklyn-based artist inspired by community, nature, ritual, ancient technology, and hip-hop culture. Blending time-based media, rhythmic storytelling, and emerging tech, he creates immersive works exploring history, identity, and Black abstract improvisation. His work has been shown at IDFA Doc Lab, BAMM, MoCADA, and the Caribbean Cultural Center, and performed at the Brooklyn Museum. Manner Contemporary and Related Intermediate. Santana also teaches at NYU Tisch's ITP and IMA programs and collaborates with Momo and Apple and is a member of Anita's ONX Studio and the Santana project.
And next, Kleiner. He is a writer, editor, and entrepreneur focused on the human dimension of artificial intelligence. He co-authored the AI Dilemma 7 Principles for Responsible Technology and teaches at NYU Tisch IMA and ITP programs, where he leads course in responsible technology, scenario planning, and management thinking. Former editor-in-chief of Strategy Business and editorial director of the Fifth Discipline Field Book Series, Kleiner has written The Age of Heritage, Who Really Matters, and The Wise Advocate.
Yuan Zhang is a New York-based new media and AI artist whose work spans interactive media, installation, and live performance. He also explores how a relation with AI through surrendering or shared authorship reshape creative culture and ethics. Also a recipient of the S2 Arts S2S Award and Humanism Art Prize. Zhang's work has been supported by the NEA, Google IMA, and MAX, and exhibited internationally at Maxi, Nemo Biennale, and Culture Hub, Beijing Times Art Museum, CVPR, and Neuro IPS. You guys can start hitting. I think it will be better for the audience to see you guys in the order.
Okay, after watching students' opinion on AI, I'm gonna ask our speaker the same question. What are your opinion about AI's role plays in your life, and what role it should be played? Does anyone want to say it out?
I can start, I guess. So watching the Runway presentation, which was amazing, I thought what I always think when I see AI demonstrations, which is this is a tool for self-awareness and self-discovery. So for example, have you used it to let people see how they come across and how they would come across if they, sort of acted a different way, how others see them in different settings? Can it be a tool for self-discovery? And in general, I think AI has not proven to be that great at productivity. It has proven to be pretty good at innovation, but largely at helping people get past their boundaries. But where it's really made a difference is in the greater awareness of what you're thinking, how you're thinking it, and what has led you to believe what you believe, and how you might be able to think differently. And every time I see a tool now, I think that's what we should be exploring, and that's probably the use of AI in education and teaching.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I answer the same question?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I'm gonna say, great to see you all in person. I know you're all real. And the question was, what's the role of AI in my life? I guess to give some backstory, when I first started to experiment with time-based artwork and media, I was really impressed by the ability for me to make my own animations and sound and productions on a computer. This was previously only things that I've been able to see on TV, on the radio. So when I felt that control and power to be able to do it myself and express myself, I was really excited. And so ever since, I've gained this interest in experimenting with new technology as a form of expression. And so every time some new gadget or technique comes around, I'm excited to see how I can use it. And so AI has been really exciting, and it's also been, as an educator, it's been really exciting to see students kind of get that same feeling that I felt when I first started making things on a computer, to feel like they can make anything that they want now. And so even though I've been experimenting with AI, I haven't really been using it in the artwork that I share with the world. This is all stuff that kind of lives in my own archive and library right But as an educator, we teach it. I teach a class called Hypercinema at ITP, and that's an introduction to time-based storytelling. Time-based media being any artwork that changes over time. So you have sound or music or video. And so this introduction kind of allows folks to tell their own stories in their own way. And so part of this course, we teach sound design, we teach sequential images and stop motion and get into motion graphics and animation, but then we also get into synthetic media and AI. And luckily we've been like generously gifted unlimited access to Runway for all the students in their first year, so they get to explore and experiment with that. And so it's been really exciting to kind of see how folks are engaging with the software, but even more exciting than that are the discussions that we have in class about the ethics and what we feel the future is going to be like. And so, you know, I have more questions than I do have answers at this point. And I don't know if you're willing to talk more about that, but that's how we're using AI right now.
I think like my experience with AI is a little bit strange or weird. I think back then was like 2018 something. AI, the term generative AI wasn't even coined yet, right? Back then, people have been approaching AI in a very experimentational way. And AI for me is a kind of interesting medium to explore things like how you can dialogue with our collective subconscious. So a metaphor would be, for example, currently we are all in this room together and we have like face-to-face communications. But what if I can have a dialogue with everybody else who's not here with empty space? The things that are the past history of everyone who has been here and that somehow builds up to something that represents something inside us, but not us really. So that's like a very weird perspective. And I think now, as AI has evolved so much over the past few years and things have turned a lot, I think this question still remains one of the main things that I personally was trying to pursue, but it's just everybody's focus has changed and then more like a weird situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
So then, really, I loved hearing about collective and conscious dialogue with it. I agree. I totally think that's what AI is doing. I use conventional wisdom, but I like collective unconscious better. And I really like the idea that we're telling stories of ourselves and having them reflected back to us. The AI Dilemma is a book about responsible technology, and I had a co-author who passed away recently, Juliet Powell. Very untimely and sad. And, but she was at Columbia and she was doing a dissertation on can big tech companies, AI companies, govern themselves? Can they be trusted to make the decisions about what AI is going to do? And she wrote 250 pages, but the short answer was no, they can't be trusted. And I read the manuscript and I was becoming a book editor at the time, and I said, I think you have a book here. And she said, will you co-author it with me? And it's one of the decisions I really appreciate that I made right. I stopped being a book editor. I started delving with her into what AI should be held accountable to. And actually, Lynn, if you don't mind. So there's a few things. You know, there's what about risk? Can the risk be intentional? People get harmed. You know, self-driving cars hit people. You know, things happen that people are scored. They're denied benefits. Shocking examples of what even benign governments, like in the Netherlands, do, where there was a scandal where people from Morocco, immigrants from Morocco and Turkey, lost their benefits just because somebody else from another country had committed welfare fraud. And so the algorithm did predictive analytics and targeted these people and 1,500 children were forcibly removed from their families. People lost their homes, their life savings. You know, it's kind of, when attention is not paid to risk, just terrible things happen. You know, we're seeing a little bit of that here now. But there could be more if AI were really used. And then there's questions about misinformation. There's questions about who owns the data that is gathered. There are issues around explainability and whether you can question not just the AI algorithm, but also the biases and the companies that produce it and the decisions that are made along the way. And Lynn, if you don't mind skipping ahead, skip a few slides. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, stop there, go back. Back another, back, okay, there. So this is one of many examples of querying image programs on what the inherent biases are that they gather from, from just the world at large. I just asked successful corporate leaders at the peak of their careers and unsuccessful corporate leaders who have been fired for illegal or unethical behavior. And as you can see, the conventional wisdom, the collective unconscious, makes a lot of assumptions about what those people are going to be like and where they're come from and their race, their ethnic background. And this was done recently, but I did it 2 years ago, same results. It's not just an American issue. So the next slide, if you'll take this one slide. I have a student, Sam Wu at ITP, and she did this experiment with a Chinese program, a Chinese image generation program. She said, show me a woman taller than the man standing next to her. And she got this image. Go again, next slide please. So she tried again. A woman taller than the man standing next to her, and she got this. Notice she did not say wedding, she did not say formal wear, she just said that. Okay, next slide please, Linda. A woman taller than the man standing next to her. Next slide please. Okay, she's getting a little irritated now, Sam. So, a woman taller than the man standing next to her, she is taller. And she gets this. Next one. Okay, a woman taller than the man standing next to her. The woman is taller than the man. Next slide, please. This is where she gave up. She couldn't get this Chinese image generator to show this image because, again, there is a collective unconscious. It occurs to me now that I should try it with Midjourney or DALL-E and see if it's different in a different cultural background. But I suspect that even here there would be some difficulty in seeing that image. It's not a bias in the algorithm, it's a bias in the collective unconscious. It's a bias in the broad range of data. There's been a lot of work done on this. Joy Ball and Mimi wrote a book last year called Gender Shades, which goes into how deeply embedded these biases are. So we have to learn how to discern when something is AI generated and when it's not AI generated. And we have to learn how to discern when the information is deliberate and when it's just coming out of the collective unconscious. I really like it. I'm going to use it. And we have to learn how to develop our own judgment as creators and as the audience members. I don't want to use the word consumers, but as constituents of AI material, to know when it's biased and when it's not, how to deal with it.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of important points. Like definitely there always been talks about how let's try and make AI as flexible and fluid as possible by adding as much data in it. But at the end of the day, there's this like collective aspect to it. There's a lot of societal underpinnings behind a lot of the the data that we do not have control of. So I really wanted to I think one aspect that you also mentioned is kind of like data literacy, like having more people be more aware of like what is AI, what is not AI, and what the influence of AI is in their day-to-day activities. I just want to ask if there's any panelists that kind of want to expand more on like this collective aspect.
It's becoming increasingly harder to distinguish what's AI and what's not AI. Like recently, OpenAI's new platform, Sora 2, can generate highly realistic videos of people and things. And so recently, within the past week, users have been generating videos of like dead celebrities hanging out together. And if you'd shown me something like this, you know, a year ago, I'd be like, where'd you get that footage from? But it's all synthetic. And so that just makes me wonder about the next generation. How will they be able to discern what's real and what's not? And so this question came up in class the other day. Like, conveniently this week, we just got into our synthetic media discussions. And so, you know, one of the questions that came up in class was, is it going to be like CG? If you look at like early computer graphics and visual effects from, you know, the early 2000s or a few years ago, you can look back and be like, oh man, that looks so fake. But when it came out, at the moment that it was released, it convinced us all we were really excited about seeing that kind of thing. But as time goes by, we can look back at that media and tell, oh, yeah, that's not real. So is the same thing going to happen now with this photorealistic AI? Will we be able to discern what's real or what's not? Another point came up about, you know, just the creation of, for example, there's like people who are generating videos of Martin Luther King doing stand-up comedy, right? It looks real and it sounds real, but obviously it's not. So how do future generations who are learning about the civil rights movement know what media to trust, you know, at that moment? So these are all questions that are coming up in class.
I think I can also share one kind of interesting data point about this, is that since the launch of like a lot of these video making AI models, especially like Sora 2, I was having some like daily conversations with folks around it, and then people start to feel like saturated or burned out by these. And in the past, people would be amazed by like visual effects, right? They would appreciate these much more because there's an association with the time and effort of the artists behind them actually spending or burning their lives for these, so they feel the connection of a living human being through these. But now, like everything is like generating like that connection is lost, and they start to feel like there's like a weird turn, like they started to appreciate daily footages that has no meaning, like mundane daily footages of maybe just a cat walking by the storefront, maybe just like a traffic cam having cars go by, and they feel something different watching those live footage of ourselves with actual time in it. So I think like things starts to change a little bit, but I'm not sure, right? Of course, like people are still amazed by the ability of these crazy generative AI tools these days, right? There's so much about the industry pushing and pushing and pushing for that. But I also think there's like some forces that are almost like the underlayer that, I don't know,
Yeah, I think also like because there's so much AI content, it can really desensitize like a lot of connection with like the creator, whoever makes these like images and videos. I also think it also is kind of related to how the platform allows it. I heard that, you know, like YouTube, for example, is trying to prevent more AI videos from coming out and kind of valuing more of the YouTubers and the content creators. I think something with the landscape that you are in can really influence how much content you're kind of interacting with. I wonder if you guys have any similar experiences, ideas, or disagree or agree with this kind of view.
Yeah, I think, as we all have gained this ability to create Hollywood's level of visual effects in our pocket, in the future, will that really be as exciting and as cool as we once thought it was, to go to the movies? And I don't know, I'm already seeing a shift where certain folks, including myself, kind of are more interested in real life and things that have happened. So my own art practice, I've actually been spending less time in front of the screen and wanting to kind of go back into my family archives and see photos and videos and images from a time where I wasn't here, or a time in the past. And I've been looking at older work that I've been doing that investigate archives, and I found out that my son is really interested in some of these videos and watching them. And so there's a value to this archival footage, and so, or this archives that we all have. And so I've been challenging my students to kind of also look back in their camera rolls and, on their old devices, and maybe bring some of that footage out and remix it or reinvestigate it, to see what other stories they can tell or pull out of that information. So yeah, I think this idea that, there might be a bigger interest in more documentary style media, now that the landscape is becoming saturated with synthetic media.
I teach a class in content strategy, which is basically media creators. It's at NYU IMA, so it's interactive media creators talking about how they're going to present themselves to the world at large. Where their audience is going to be, what their story is going to be, how they manage their narrative. And the topic of Andy Warhol came up, and we were talking about his, atelier and the idea that everybody's going to be famous for 15 minutes, but in fact, what's happening is we're all famous, but in a different way than famous meant before. It's a little bit like the difference between, sort of mass-produced beer and craft beer in a neighborhood. We're all like artisan creators now. It's not like we have a small community around us, but we get to know our audience through people we know and people they know and people they know, and our kind of artisanal experience expands as we spread our influence. We no longer spread our influence through reviews or commentary or gatekeepers or where we went to school even, but rather through how we connect. That is a fundamental shift in the way that people make an impression, and I don't think most creators have yet come to terms with what it means. I certainly haven't. And so my day job is I write and edit business books, or it's been for a long time. The number of books, nonfiction books, bought in 2025 is the same as the number of nonfiction books bought in 2005. The number of nonfiction books published per year is about 100 times that many. There wasn't time to read everything that was interesting before. Now, it's not only competing against other books, but it's competing against everything that comes through on a smartphone. And the idea that there is an audience for what you say, I look at, and then that AI is going to multiply that by, what, 100-fold? So the person who has something to say is now the person who cares, because that's the one thing AI can't do, is it can't actually want something to happen genuinely, except that its algorithm says it wants you to, it wants the audience to respond effectively. So that's what we're sculpting with. We're sculpting with limited attention and a high level of need for connection. And to the extent, on some level, the tools are amazing, and one of the things I would love to know more about is what skills it takes to become really proficient at something like Runway. And whether this is something where there will now be some really great, amazing artisans, and then everybody else doing run-of-the-mill, sort of, let me tell you about my childhood kind of projects. Or is it the kind of thing where what we know and how we feel about a person also determines what kind of audience we are? And what does that world look like?
So I actually have a question about the last thing you mentioned. What if, let's say, like in 5 years' time, AI sort of developed its own way of like care? Would that qualify as a legitimate audience?
I have an opinion, but it's not like I know. I worked on a book last year called AI-Human Symbiosis. And there's 3 types of empathy, and right now AI can simulate two of the 3. And so the first is it can act like it knows other people. So, in fact, it can do that with infinite patience. So if you go to an AI bot and talk out your thoughts and your feelings, and I've done this, you can get guidance that takes you on a better path, because it can, and you'll trust it. Most people will trust that more than they would trust a human advisor, and that's been studied. So empathy, it can show that it knows us. It can manage us in the sense of making connections and giving us the prompts and that we need. But what it can't do yet, and it can't quite simulate it yet, is it can't care about us. It can't, and I've experimented with other classes where we take human written text and then we get AI to generate something that's equivalent, and we see if we can tell the difference. And we do that with artwork as well. And what's different is there's an element of randomness in the AI system. Once you're attuned to it, you can kind of pick it out. I mean, we saw it in some of these films, if we were looking for it, where there's images that are individually very powerful. But why that one rather than another one? Well, in a really good human-made work, if it's a book, every phrase serves a purpose and builds on the next one. If it's a video, you know why every shot is there, and the continuity is not just a matter of the clothing lining up, but it's a matter of the emotional reaction that goes from one shot to another. That can be simulated up to a point. If AI gets to the point where it can routinely simulate that, then creativity will be doing something that AI can't simulate. If AI can simulate coming up with creativity beyond what it can produce and what can be simulated beyond it, then creativity will be back to, I produce things for my parents, but my parents are now my audience. And the only thing that matters is that they know me, I think.
Well, thank you. Well, another question also you guys brought up, like we have more questions than answers, like for educators too. How do you cope this situation since you are still need to teach your student about AI? Like, does NYU has any policy or workshop, or what kind of platform you will need if you still need to teach AI to the student? Like any guideline, regulations you are hoping for, or you're acting on it? Ali, I know you have more questions than answers. How do you cope?
Yeah, I mean, at ITP, it's encouraged to use, I mean, it's part of the curriculum to learn and to teach AI and machine learning. ITP has been considered the center for the recently possible. So, you know, any and all emerging technology is considered in terms of how do we use this to creatively express ourselves or solve a problem or create something quirky, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think, you know, in my area of study, in terms of image making and time-based media and performance and stuff like that, we're encouraging people to explore it and to figure it out and to figure out their own workflows. I know in my own class, especially in the synthetic media topic, I don't do much teaching there, whereas like After Effects and Unity, we'll do step-by-step kind of instructions on how to achieve a certain effect. But with Runway and some of the other platforms, they're changing so quickly that even if I teach them something this week, next month it might be a lot different. So we're encouraging them to explore and experiment with these platforms since they have like unlimited access, and to figure out their own workflows and figure out how to pivot and change along with the technology. Because when they do graduate and they get outside of the program, the technology will probably be a lot different than what they've learned here. So I think it's more about them figuring it out on their own and figuring out their own workflows rather than a set of instructions from me. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody else feel the same way?
I can just talk about what we do. So in content strategy, for instance, we just had 2 sessions on figuring out who the audience is. And we all gathered around the table and we put on Claude, in this case, could have been ChatGPT, but we put on Claude and we said, one of the students wanted to be a recruiter, or wanted to be an artist working with digital media and scent, combining video and scent, maybe in installations. And she wanted, she's an undergraduate, she wanted to know what's the better career path, to work for a company or to go out on her own and innovate, do a startup. So we went to Claude and said, play the role. First of all, advise her on what she should do, but also make your reasoning clear. Step by step, tell us what you should, why you selected this information and this guidance and what it's based on. And then we said, okay, you suggest she should get a job at a company. So give us a name, give us the names of companies. She did. Pick one that's really apt and be the recruiter. Now tell us about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you come from? How did you get into the job? And she spins, Claude, it spins out a whole biography of a character. I'm 37 years old, I'm a woman, I went to FIT, whatever it might be. And let me give you some advice. And then we said, we did prompt engineering of the sort that's kind of at the moderate leading edge right now. So for example, don't pull your punches, don't tell us what we want to hear. We did chain of thought, go step by step and make your reasoning clear to us at each step. And it said, among other things, to be honest, it said, to be honest, your degree at IMA, when I see that you're from IMA, I downplay, that makes me want to hire someone else. I downplay it a little bit. And bear in mind, you're going to be making like 45 to 60K a year, and you're going to be working 60-hour weeks. So don't get your hopes up for having this work out too well. And as I look around the room, everybody's kind of, the mood in the room is deflated as we're watching this. And so we do the logical next thing, which you should always do with AI, which is we say, okay, what led you to say that, and can you document that this is based on actual data? Where did you get this information? And it said, effectively, well, I just made it up because I thought it would be a good story. Which is what it always does. If you challenge Gen AI, it will tell you And then, so I'll just say, the frontier in all this is having AI learn from your prompts as much as you're learning from its prompts. And they don't do that in large language models, because if it learns from your prompts, then people with an agenda, you know, a political agenda, or a racist agenda, or I want to make trouble agenda, or whatever it might be, can come in and overwhelm the model. If it's like ChatGPT or a large language model, they can manipulate it. So the frontier is in bounded AI systems that learn from the people using them, that then influence the open AI systems, that then influence the people who then go back to the bounded AI system. It's going to get very complicated. Anyway, that's...
So for my teaching, I'm currently teaching 2 classes at Tisch. One is a class called Connections Lab at IMA Low-Res, which is a class about how to build web-based, multi-person, real-time projects. And then the other one is called Creative Image Generation at ITB. So these 2 classes, actually teaching them, made me realize that in terms of like approaching AI, for me, it's like there's 2 ways that I will ask myself. Is that to see if a student is she or he actually wanting to just get to the destination, or if we, let's say we use a driving metaphor, is the student actually wanting to learn how to drive so that they can go to different places on their own, as opposed to just showing them, okay, that's the destination you go to, and then you just do that. And so, for example, like for the Connections Lab class, right, they're trying to build a web application, so there's like an end goal there. And a lot of students who have like business backgrounds, they don't have much coding experience, right? And then learning how to code or develop the web is merely a vehicle, and they should be probably use AI as more like the autopilot agent, right, that helps them to get to the destination faster, maybe. As opposed to if you're a content creator, if you are trying to use AI to assist your design or reinvent new ways of creating, then maybe you are the person who should actually turn off autopilot and then just learn how to like do that, and then maybe have AI to tell you, in order to get to that destination, there's like a different route that is slightly like that will take you 30 more minutes, but you will see something different that could be or could not be helpful to whatever you're trying to do, and maybe just like a more difficult journey, right? But that journey in itself makes sense for a creator to feel, okay, that's maybe something I haven't explored, maybe I'm not feeling comfortable with that medium, but at least after the experience, I know, okay, that's indeed something that I am not going for, so that I can comfortably go back to the places where I was feeling more confident about, and then dig deeper and spend my life more in this form of creation. So that essentially pushes me to think about really talking to each student, like to see like what type of person they are before like starting the whole teaching process.
Yeah, I think it goes with like workflow for different types of people, an artist or maybe a tech student. I think that also kind of goes in with like the previous video, what Stavros was talking about, how through his experience of like the creative process, using so many different agents and like using the longer route instead of autopilot is actually makes him fulfilled, makes him feel like 90% of the work is his. So I think it definitely comes down to like maybe the purpose and what you define as the creative process and the process of making something, because definitely I think for tech it's a lot about efficiency, about getting accurate results, whereas creative fields might be a little bit more different. So I'm curious about maybe creative processes that you guys have maybe adopted, or any other thoughts on it.
Creative process, that's a fun one for me. I've always felt like the work that I've started on a computer never felt as like genuine and personal as the work that I've started off a computer. So part of my process, and something I share, is like, I think computers are great editing tools, technology is great, it allows you to take things further, but I think every creative project should start in real life somehow. Whether that's a drawing, a photograph, a conversation, a recording, whatever it might be. And then we can incorporate it with technology to kind of take it further. And I find that there's a big difference in kind of the feeling of the soul that's embedded in the work with that process. Also, with generative AI, I feel like oftentimes the results feel like dreams. They feel so weird and kind of like things will morph into one another. And so one of the prompts in one of my classes is to go to sleep early and to dream. And when you wake up, write that dream down, but put that into a prompt and see what you get. Is it like your dream? This has been an easy way to kind of like catalog and capture dreams. Whereas before that, I used to have to be like, oh, now I got to open After Effects and figure out how I'm going to make this thing by hand or construct this dream. But with this new technology, it's a lot easier to make that happen a lot quicker. Also, in terms of process, like the stuff that I've generated, the experiments that I've done with generative AI, they haven't quite gotten to the point where I feel comfortable enough like presenting it as my own artwork. It's always like a good draft. It's a good point to kind of go from. And a lot of my work is based in collage. Sometimes I'll create textures that I'll embed or put deeper into the collage or layer with it using generative AI. And so it's part of the process, but it's never the end result for me quite yet. I don't know if it'll ever get to that point, because I always want to put my human touch and my hand in it, for it to speak, for me. My belief is also that art is an extension of the human experience. So for us to take our lived experiences and process them creatively to create this output is what connects with other people, what other people can kind of, this is how they appreciate and enjoy the art, because they feel their own human experience in it. I'm not sure that's something AI can do yet. Yeah.
Wow. I couldn't agree more. And the idea of the dream idea, can I show one more slide then? Yeah, just if you thumb down, maybe I'll tell you where it is. Okay, keep going. There, back. Yeah. Okay, this is the work of someone named Pau Garcia in Spain. I don't know if he's crossed anyone's radar, but he works with refugees. And when they left where they were, they left behind everything that they might use to remember. And so, in effect, it's like recreating a dream of where they were. He talks to them about, he interviews them, and then he uses the interview to create mostly stills, but sometimes videos of the lives they led. Sort of looking like that, the faces are shadowed, but the feel and the mood is discerned by the system as I'm imagining like a dream might be discerned by a system. You describe it at least. I would love to try that experiment. For myself, most of my stuff is in the written word. And I have learned not to have a whole piece of writing done by an AI system. I will ask it to assemble the bits in an order, and I will then, and mostly what I'm trying to do is get the repetition so that I only have to deal with the similar material in the same place. I don't have to go back and forth up and down a long manuscript to figure out where everything fits. And then I will ask it questions when I have a question, that when I have an idea and I think, I could really fill this in with some of the body of knowledge that exists out there, and I will have dialogues with parts of it if I want to deepen it, and I will work on maybe a passage, never more than 2 or 3 paragraphs, and always with the idea that I am shortcutting what I would do myself that would probably take me about 2 hours, including all of the self-doubt and just self-harassment that goes in with that. And then rework every sentence in depth until it really is what I feel connects with, my own inner integrity as a writer, and then the integrity of the audience and the integrity of the subject that I'm thinking about. Doing that, the big fear with AI in the creative process is that you're going to delegate the work, and then in the process you're going to diminish your own capacity to do that kind of work. And there seems to be research that coming out of MIT recently that says, yes, this happens. People do diminish their cognitive capabilities when they use AI to write for them. And then there's research that says actually that research is suspect. So you don't really know. But I think most of us don't want to take the chance. And also the work isn't that good when it's, a prompt or 2. It's really good. In fact, the more that AI comes in and work by AI comes in, the more valuable the work done by people with human connection becomes,
I think for me, in my own practice, is that since I know what AI is capable of now, I'm trying to do more physical work. Essentially, it just pushes me to go back to building the work that occupies the same space as we do. For example, recently I've been building a project, a cloud observing machine. And in the past, it exists as forms like, using internet webcams to observe clouds, and then have an AI to just describe the clouds and then do creative or weird interpretations of the clouds, just as how we would do it. But recently, I've been trying different ways. For example, I essentially ended up building a machine or a device with a physical form, with a telephone booth and then a camera, deploy them in the forest. This is a collaboration with fellow artist Tong Wu, and essentially we went into the forest and do location scouts and then try to set up this cloud observing device under the open sky, one near a pond and another among the trees, to have this AI experience the contextual information. And because it can be there in the environment, and then it can do observations by itself, so it was capable of coming up with unique or weird observations that is kind of hard for a human to do, right? Because in the forest, I was there installing the device, and then it was basically nobody would go there to do things like that, and the mosquitoes there were apparently very happy that a human being is there. It's like, but I cannot stay there for more than an hour because I get allergy and bites all the time. But for a machine, for an AI, you can very comfortably sit there and then just watch the skies, wait for a cloud to come by to fit nicely inside a frame built with the tree branches, and then have bees or insects that build some visual relationship between the clouds in the background and then things happening in the foreground, which can in itself create a weird interpretation of the concept of clouds. So that's what made me realize maybe I should be working more with AI in physical forms that either built by myself or somebody else I care.
Okay, can I add on to that? I've also been really interested in making things by hand lately. I've been making sculptures and masks and just things that exist in real life. And I once considered myself a digital artist, and now, I don't know, I'm really excited to work with my hands. And I think that this balance is really important. Also in terms of workflow, I've seen some workflows now with animation, where animation is a very tedious process, where animators are kind of sketching by hand first, but then using AI platforms like Comfy UI and Stable Diffusion to do the coloring and the texturing and creating background elements. And so that's really exciting to me, to be able to do like these complex projects and delegate the AI to do all the tedious stuff that we don't want to do, but still maintaining that kind of hands-on approach is exciting. So I'm excited to just create new workflows where we can do more of those kind of projects.
Yeah, thank you. I guess like for non-artists or not creators before, they have this value and chance to create anything by just like a line of prompting, so that like devaluing what artist and creator is doing, and that like make the art market or digital market more crowded. Like, do you feel like students should be prepared to do something? Like, what is their craftsmanship, like that thing cannot be replaced? Or yeah,
I think it's going to create, two different tiers maybe, or multiple tiers. You're going to have the people who feel empowered by being able to make whatever they want with AI, and then you're going to have a group of folks who still like to work with their hands and do things by hand. And you're going to have this like artisanal, approach, and then you're going to have like the mass-produced kind of version. It's the equivalent of like, wearing clothes that were made in a factory versus something that was knitted by, an artisan, or fast food versus like a home-cooked meal is my favorite analogy. I usually want the home-cooked meal based on recipes that have been passed down versus the fast food option. So
I think it's going to be like before and after photography. I think there will be changes. So I also teach a class on the future, and one of the scenarios that came up was no sense of truth. The deep fake, it's impossible to this is not predetermined, it might not happen, but it could very well happen, that there is no way to rely on the validity, the veracity, the accuracy of any particular piece of work. It's all imagination. And people are not psychologically prepared for this. So one thing that is predetermined is if that happens, we're not prepared. And therefore, there will be a very high premium on trusted sources of validity, which the only one that I can think of right now is Wikipedia, which has very strict standards for what gets entered. I could imagine a system with blockchain that verifies each piece of work exists, and then an AI system that is constantly verified itself, that is trusted to at least get down to kind of ground truth about something. And then there's lots of interpretations. Those kinds of issues, and then the issue of knowing something's provenance and where it came from and was it sampled, Right now, the music industry has enormous issues around and infrastructure around figuring out who wrote what part of a song and how much royalties they deserve for the performers, the writers, the co-writers, the people it was sampled from, all of that. That's probably the case with every piece of work going forward. And then finally, I'm working with a company now called Foundtech that has a system called, they have a system called RAID that does that checks the validity of work that you're putting forth. They sort of advise companies. And they have a system that monitors what's going on in an organization, like if you work for a university, let's say, and the university had this program, it would be able to predict your behavior. Are you going to be a star, or are you going to be sort of someone who goes home and doesn't think about the job later, based on what you do at work. And they were going to sell it to performance, to HR departments, basically. and use it as a way, and their sales pitch was, you will know how to develop your people. And my attitude there, like everything else, we are going to be monitored as consumers of art. They're going to know what we respond to. They being not just Facebook and TikTok's leaders, but anyone who's creating anywhere is going to know who their audience is and what their audience is responding to. The question is, are we going to have the data about ourselves? Are we going to be able to use that data to chart the kind of lives that we would prefer to lead, especially in this extremely complex, highly manipulated, digital/real reality environment where we grow up thinking we have agency, and we discover that agency takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to carve the life you want. Are we going to get, are these tools going to help us do that? Are we going to, and if they do help us do that, are they going to do it in a manipulative way? Or are they going to do it in a way where we are getting the guidance we ask for? Where enshittification, as Cory Doctorow says, is not a part and parcel of the way these systems operate. I think people at Tisch are going to have a hand in making that happen, in being participant. Everyone who works in a system influences the way that system goes. So that's my interest right now. And yeah, it's a never-ending interest for a lot of us, I think.
I think in terms of the evaluation, I do have like a slightly more optimistic.
What was the optimistic?
So I had a friend, and he's like a concept artist working for game companies, and he apparently, due to generative AI, right, he sort of lost 90% of his income, right, especially during the first phase of generative AI, and but actually he told me recently he has started to get more contracts or business because people realized what AI created, although they look fantastic, amazing, right? It satisfies the goal of creating beautiful assets for the game, but it lacks the perspective that he used to do a particular scene. And I think one thing is that the fatigue, right, of seeing so many generative assets sort of raises the bar for everybody, more or less, and people became more or less more sensitive to what's unique about a particular artist, which actually brings him more audience. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that for him himself, he also sort of liberates himself from like using the traditional way of basically creating a structure and then adding details to it. And it turned out he's more interested in just creating the structure or the framework, and then he has more freedom to visit different locations, draw inspiration from the nature, and then do more. Essentially just change his workflow or his way of communicating with the earth.
My question is about what is the economics that's going to surround art? Because accessibility is going to become a big thing. Because when you talk about, you brought up the point about mass-produced art and artisanal art, right? And I'm from India, so like the common man back home is going to be more, I don't know, artistically inspired by something they see on their social media feed than like a Mona Lisa painting which is sitting on the other side of the world. So my question is, how is AI gonna affect accessibility to art, and how is art going to be accessible? One thing, okay, actually, I'm so sorry, I really don't know how to put this into words.
Can I try? Are you talking about how will art be afforded and how will artists be paid, or are you talking about how will we find audiences and that connect with us regardless of whether we're paid for the work we produce or not?
Yeah, it's actually an intersection of both those questions. So it's like somewhere in the middle because art is also, it's about both audience and it's also about, I'm so sorry, I'm really blanking right now.
Can I take a crack at it? I don't know, I think that we can use these tools. I know the audience is always a question in terms of making commercial art. Like what is the audience gonna want? What can we sell to folks? But I think now that we have these tools that allow us to dream, like how can we imagine futures that we want to live in ourselves? And how can we think forward and imagine the lives that we want to live? And by creating that image or being able to dream of that image, maybe we can also move closer to creating that in real life. Like if you look, back at old science fiction films or even books, they predicted, a lot of the technology that we use today. And so maybe we're in a moment now where we can kind of imagine what this equitable and beautiful future could look like for us using this art. So I think that's my answer to your question.
Hello guys, firstly, thanks a lot for the talk. It was wonderful listening to all of you. I happen to be an IT student. Right on the third floor where ITP is on the fourth. I happen to be a product designer. I've worked as UI UX designer for a couple of years, but I began my creative journey as a songwriter, and I worked in music in studios and stuff back in London. But now I'm making content where I'm writing songs which are suited for 1-minute reels, and that's fun. But I feel it's really difficult for me to, keep writing songs and then record and then create the storyboards because that's required if you're making things. And I thought, well, perhaps I could create an AI workflow that really helps me, where we have an agent that really, helps me create a full-blown storyboard that later on we can use for, filming stuff, which is not going to be that difficult because it's just 1 minute. And then even for songwriting, perhaps come up with some ideas or something like that. So I don't want to hand my, core skill of being able to write songs and record to AI, but I want to give the other stuff which I don't have the time for, which I'm actually not interested in. And that's the one thing which I love the most about AI, that I can focus on what I specialize in and don't have to work on the rest. I can give that to an agent. How do you think is, I mean, we can do that. If you were to do it, if we were to create like a workflow or something, how do you think that would work? If I've explained myself the best way. Thank you.
So this is not an answer, but I think rather than an answer, it's like a question. Using an analogy of the web development class that I'm teaching, so a student was trying to create a startup, and then she knows her audience, and then she has great business ideas. She understands what's the best way to present this product, but in terms of design and then in terms of creating a functional application, she's still learning, and then she was using AI to accelerate this process. And it's a little bit similar, right? Where you always have something that you feel like you should really keep it to yourself, where it's not just a way of making money, but also a way of finding your connections to a medium that has meaning to you, and whether you're doing it for a reward or not, you're very happy, right? In the process of making it, it makes you feel happy. I think for you, like the songwriting part, right? It satisfies something deep inside your heart. And having the AI to do the other things could definitely help to bring a reward in terms of source of income and then broadening your audience. But for the part that where you try to keep it to yourself, does it help in bringing this level, bring this little component to the next level? Is it assisted by AI in this process? I think that's something I personally would think a lot in terms of like using AI. Has it helped me to bring the part that I care the most to the next level? And if that's a yes to me, then I'm happy to have AI involved in this process. If not, then maybe I would think about it again.
Process. Yeah, I think that in terms of like approaching a project, especially that has tedious elements or things that you don't want to do, like AI is a welcome collaborator, at least in terms of creating a prototype. But I really do value collaboration with other creative human beings as well. And I find that, you know, I can get a prototype out by myself at 3 a.m. using AI, but like I think the real value comes from like bouncing ideas off of other people and other people who's, you know, who are experts in that particular field, and they always bring some added value to whatever project that I've been working on. I'm just thinking in the past about like animation projects. The collaborations that I've had have always been like way more dynamic and beautiful than anything that I could have imagined on my own. So I think that that human process is also really important as well. But that, you know, the technology and the AI can get you closer to that prototype to be able to show somebody a clearer idea of what you want to do. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I'd like to follow. I wanted to hear what you guys said first, because I think your question is really important, but it's not really a question about AI. It's a question this is one of those cases where this is a question that goes back to the beginning of creativity. So in my view, there's a few different kinds of work. There's the work you love, and there's the work that's just a chore, and you want to get through it. And if AI helps you get through it faster, great. Feel no concern. There's the work that seems like it's a chore, but it's really like part of the work, and you don't always know what it is. You know, it's sort of, this is what the Buddhists talk about when they talk about chop wood, carry water. It's, you know, the stuff you have to sweep the room before you can do the work in it, and the sweeping of the room is the part of doing the work, and it takes a certain amount of maturity, which I don't yet have, to know how to do that well and to be satisfied with it. And then there's the part where you don't even know it's going to be part of the work, but it turns out to be the most creative and interesting at all. And it's almost like it doesn't even show up until you set the conditions for it elsewhere. And so, in a way, your question is basically about how do I work on myself so that I know the difference between all these different types of creative work, so I can make it happen without going crazy, while still making enough money to, you know, make a livelihood, without having to take 3 other day jobs, with, you know, getting the reward and recognition commensurate with what I put into the you know, the songs that I write, and then taking enough chances that I'm going to get the reward coming later. And I met a guy yesterday who is an expert on workflow. And what he basically said to me, which I did not want to hear, was that in order to take these kinds of questions seriously, you have to, it's not like you have to track your time. But if you're going to do something, he said to me, like if you, let's say you've got to work on a piece of writing, and it could go on forever. But if you say, I've got an hour and a half to do this, and then you say, here's what I think I can do in that hour and a half, and then you discover what you can actually do in that hour and a half, that becomes a small thing that becomes liberating. And this is not what I want to hear, because I hate discipline of all sorts. I hate tracking myself. I just don't want to do it. But I did it this morning. And I finished something that I thought would probably take me 2.5 days, interrupted by meetings like this. And I'm not saying I'm going to do that forever, that I'm going to actually make that a way of life, but the ability to be aware of myself as I'm doing creative work, and to be aware of when I'm calling on AI and when I'm calling on my own resources, and when I'm just like reading a news site because I want to put it off, and forgiving myself for every part of it, but also knowing that if I build the capability habitually to track myself that way, that becomes part of my arsenal. And that means I'm not fighting myself as much. And underneath your question, I kind of read a fight with myself, or a fight with oneself, that is part of every creator's experience.
Thank you for sharing. We have second panel, and some of the guest speakers will gonna talk more about the workflow and creativity. So let's take a 10 minutes break and we will come back. Okay, thank you. Startup and global organization, including United Nations, Google, and the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank. She currently serves as a technical program manager of Building Wings, adjunct instructor at NYU School of Professional Studies, and co-organizer of New York City's largest engineering leaders community. Serious passion lies in intersection of AI education and social impact, helping organizations use technology responsibly. She believes AI should amplify human potential, not replace it, empowering people to learn, connect, and create meaningful change.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Siri Kostanyan. I'm a technical program manager with over 10 years of experience, and also I'm an adjunct instructor at NYU SPS.
And I saw you are the International Student Award leader. Wow, congrats. And you are like AI product manager, like all those things about that.
Let me share then about one of the most meaningful projects of our students. That was a collaboration between our NYU SPS and also United Nations International Computing Center. And together we designed an AI-powered tool that detects hate speech and xenophobic content across digital media, especially content that targets vulnerable populations. Currently, this topic is very sensitive. Here we use how it's important to leverage AI, guiding it transparent way. And that project was a 4 billion AI project at that time. The project became a huge learning experience. We had graduate students from 16 participants in the first phase, let's say for the MVP, and it was officially released during the United Nations General Assembly in September of this year. So I'm very, very proud about that.
What makes you to work with AI? Like what's effect about AI that attracts you the most?
Right now, as I said, I'm a technical program manager and I'm working at Building Wings. And this is a leading ed tech company focused on literacy tools for students with severe disabilities. And also I'm teaching at NYU SPS. And so working at the intersection of technology, AI, and education. Based on my experience, I can say that I'm very passionate about using tech and AI for social good, not just for only efficiency or automation, but for the impact as well. So in my opinion, there is a lot of talk about AI these days, but very few organizations actually focus on how it can serve people and communities. So that's why for me, AI is most powerful when it helps create access, inclusion, and positive change. And just bringing an example, in my classes, I try to show students that AI isn't just about using ChatGPT to finish homework, but it's also about learning with AI. Like I encourage them to use AI tools, to ask deeper questions, to explore ideas from different angles. That makes me very happy and motivated where AI can take us if we use it thoughtfully, let's say.
Yeah. Has your opinion on AI shifted recently, like during your work with AI?
My opinion on AI has definitely evolved over the last couple of years, especially considering the AI projects that I led. In the beginning, I can say that I saw it mostly as a technical tool, something that could automate processes or make our work faster. But now I can say that I see it more like an electricity. It has incredible power to light up our world, but if it's misused, it can also harm us. That's why now I see AI as a partner that can help us learn better, design smarter systems, and reach more people, but only if we know how to guide it, how we make sure that it reflects our values, our empathy, and our responsibility. So I have seen AI can open access to education, help people communicate and create opportunities. But it really depends on the human behind it. Just to summarize, for me, the shift has been from seeing AI as a tool to seeing it as a shared responsibility.
What kind of AI products can use for artists for them to familiar with this AI age, not to replacing their jobs?
That's a really good question and honestly a very real concern. So I completely understand why many artists feel hesitant because when AI is used the wrong way, it can take away credit, originality, and even identity. But I think AI can be designed for artists, not against them. And the key is to make AI a creative partner, a tool that supports the process but not replaces the person. For example, it can help artists explore ideas faster, generate variations, or handle, repetitive technical steps so they can spend more time on the part that's truly theirs, the emotion, the story, the message. Like even they can validate their ideas with AI, which is one of the most difficult parts in product development, and especially for artists. When we build AI tools that are transparent, respect ownership, and give artists full control, we shift from competition to collaboration. It's like having a smart assistant in your studio helps you experiment and expand your imagination, but never signs your name on the canvas. Let's say like this, yeah. And again, I completely understand that fear. It's something I hear a lot, not just from artists, but from educators, programmers, and honestly, professionals in every field. And my advice is don't focus on AI replacing you. Focus on how you can guide it. AI can automate tasks, but it can't replace curiosity, empathy, or imagination. And those are the real superpowers of people, of creative people. The best way to embrace this new era is to stay curious, like ask questions and start experimenting. Use AI to amplify your ideas, not to define them. Learn how it works, question its outputs, and make it part of your, creative toolkit. And I often say that AI is like fire. If you learn how to use it, it gives you light and energy. If you ignore it, it can burn everything around you. So the goal is to understand it, use it responsibly, and let it expand what you are capable of. Yeah, the future belongs to those who collaborate with AI, not those who compete with it. So
Yeah.
this is important to remember.
Like what artists are facing, they're struggling right now. It's gonna be like the whole human, they're gonna face this problem in the future.
Yes.
So like we need to get prepared for everything and get to learn everything. Like it's there, we need to embrace it.
Then let's welcome our second panel discussion, AI plus cross-disciplinary. First is our Anna Isabel de Bouquet from Runway, and Maria Miles, who is a founder of an entertainment law practice with office in New York. Maria's practice focuses on all areas of entertainment law, including film narrative and documentary, music, literary, publishing, and digital media. She has represented award-winning producers, directors, writers, and actors, television hosts, multi-platinum recording artists, and corporations in the fashion and sports industry related to their entertainment matters. Maria is executive director of the Hellenic Film Society USA and serves as secretary of the board of New York Women in Film and Television. She continues to serve NYWIFT as her legal counsel. She is also an adjunct professor at Firsten Graduate School of Cinema, the School of Visual Arts, and adjunct professor at NYU Tisch School of the Arts.
Next up, we have David Pointer, is an assistant professor and creative technologist based in Brooklyn, trained in illustrations and self-taught in programming. He bridges design and technology across industries, including entertainment, advertising, education, and automotive innovation. His award-winning work spans immersive experiences for Google, Apple, Meta, and Ford, as well as museum exhibitions for institutions like the Illinois Holocaust Museum and the International Spy Museum. Pointer also taught the inaugural introduction to virtual production at NYU Tisch.
Our first question is, AI models are trained on vast amount of data, often without artists concerning or credit. What new ethical responsibilities do creators have when using these tools, and what role should the company play in establishing these standards? Maria, do you want to say something about that?
Okay, now I'm on. So I'm going to speak from a very clearly legal perspective on it. This is ever evolving. Every day brings new decisions, new cases. Currently, there is a contradiction in the courts. One court believes that it is fair use to feed an AI program material so it can learn. Another one said it is not fair use. So we're going to see what the appeals come out of it. But essentially, I think the discussion that's really important to understand from the legal perspective, and we come down to super fundamental legal basics on this, is what is a copyright? And so a copyright is defined as the original expression of an idea fixed in a tangible medium. That means it requires originality, and it is not the idea that is protected, but it's the expression of that idea. And courts, have acknowledged that there are a finite amount of ideas, and we do kind of reinvent specific tropes and stories, but the expression is very different. So what I like to tell students is, we all know Romeo and Juliet, we all know West Side Story, we all know The Notebook, and we all know Step Up, whatever it was with Channing Tatum, right? They're all the same story, exactly the same idea. They're told in very different ways. So they're not suing each other. The other component that the courts have come down and decided on is that in order, the holder of a copyright must be a human. So computers, programs, inanimate objects, monkeys, this is how the court decided this. Someone submitted a copyright on behalf of their monkey who took a picture. And the court said, no, monkeys cannot hold copyrights, we need humans. So everything I'll say today is through that spectrum. Now, you had a second part to that very long question. What was the second part?
What role should companies play in establishing these standards? Like you are a co-founder of companies.
Right, so, this is a big question. And the answer is I don't know. I think we're in this area where we're exploring, we're grappling. Obviously, there are professions that have well-established ethical guidelines. That is medicine, science, the legal profession. I know is laughable as most of you think of that, but lawyers do have ethical guidelines, and they are enforced. And there are many other industries that are not as carefully legislated, monitored. But I think the repeating warning is not, let's turn our back, let's shun AI, but it's, this is happening, let's get with it, and let's create some guardrails as a society. Now that's gonna be hard, because even culturally, we have different mores from country to country, from culture to culture. So it's going to be an interesting evolution. But from the legal side, in America, and I don't want to boggle it, but there's certain rights that are federal rights and certain rights that are state by state rights. So as a practitioner, especially in entertainment where our products, our clients' products are distributed throughout the entire country, we go by the most stringent state, analyze it through the most stringent state so that we know it meets a certain threshold. I think that's going to happen worldwide. The EU has far more stringent rules than the US right now about AI. And we're all going to have to rise to that level if we want material to be distributed in Europe, for example. So I think it's an ever-evolving conversation, but it's an interesting thing to have to contemplate. And I'm happy that we're having this discussion and contemplating these things.
Yeah, exactly. And for Anna Isabel, do you have something to say in the stand of Runway about this similar question, like how Runway has incorporated like the copyright or ethical issue, and maybe from your personal ideas?
Yeah, I can speak definitely more from my personal ideas than I can speak from Runway. I'll also preface by I can't talk about anything that relates to our data. It's a proprietary information, so I can't discuss that. I can say that if you're, there's some data partnerships, that is where we're sourcing things from. So if you look at our partnership with Lionsgate, that is where that is coming from. That is why a lot of our material looks so cinematic and has that kind of input in it. I think that there's always been a responsibility on creators, on founders and everything. That's been true throughout history and on politics. It's a responsibility for every single person. It's a responsibility for consumers. I kind of want to put it back on you guys, on me, on everyone a little bit. What worries me when I look at the conversations, even like the panel discussion that we just had, I thought was really fascinating. So thank you really for all the thoughts that you shared. There were so many moments I wanted to jump in, ask questions and engage with what you guys were saying. But it worries me sometimes that the people that I really want involved in this process are people who are saying, I'm afraid of this new technology, I'm stepping away from it, who are creating a binary away from it. And what that means is that that technology doesn't stop developing, but it stops developing without your input. And your input as creators, as artists, as really intelligent people in this room. Really, really impressed with how you guys have built this up. And so my invitation is beyond like the founders of these companies, like, yeah, if you want to go, by the way, if you want to have like ethical input over all this, build a company, build something, build projects in this space, build something up. Like, you guys are all empowered to do this. And if we're talking about AI as increasing accessibility, which it is, and making it easier for certain things, like I mentioned at some point, like I can't draw, right? That doesn't mean that other artists shouldn't be drawing, or that I'm hoping that nobody's going to be doing hand-drawn things, but it is that one piece in the development process that for me was blocking me in the past to making things. That's now been skipped over. Great, so now I can be in the space and I can be creating things. So be involved, contribute to these different things. Be vocal about it, understand how the technology works, and I think you can be productively critical about the technology when you understand how it's actually built. A lot of the criticisms that I hear about AI, of this feeling of like, well, I don't want something that's AI made, comes from the misunderstanding that you press a button and AI has made this, all the films that I showed you, for example, that's not how the technology works, and you've seen this, and you've seen this also by all the work that you guys are making. It is not a one button comes out the output. So I think understanding the technology, engaging with it, and then critiquing it is a good way forward.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, it's a great point. I think understanding the technology is really key to this. If you're really passionate about intellectual property and what models are trained on, there are models that are trained on more open source collections, and the consumer has a choice. If everyone starts to use those models because that is what they want to use and their motivation, then other companies will follow suit because they will be using their models. So that's, you have a choice, and to understand what the technology is, I would say go down that rabbit hole first and really kind of crystallize your opinion. Intellectual properties, especially, has been going on since, well known in the 70s, and, Disney and all sorts of philosophical debates on what that means and how it affects creatives. I like to stay away from that a little bit because, you can be influenced by something, but I don't really want to plagiarize something. And as a creative, you should distinctly know the difference between what those are. So, yeah, I mean, it's a weighty conversation, but I don't like to really get in the weeds of it, to be honest.
Yeah, talking about that, I also graduated from reeling illustration. That's why the reason I came here. I feel like illustration, what we learned, the traditional skills will be replaced. So we want to know more about this technology, about AI. And on that topic for David, how should creators prioritize their development to thrive in this new landscape? Like, how do you cope your traditional illustrator background into this new virtual production technology background?
Sure, I can show some of the work that I've done and kind of go through and give you, an introduction to kind of my background. You can read that blurb over there, but essentially that is my moniker, D-H-A-K-O-N. My middle name's Håkon, it's Norwegian. But it's important to me because it's my mom's side of the family. My mom's side of the family is very artistic, creative. Also empathetic. She was a nurse, but her father was a firefighter and draftsman. So that kind of has the creative side of it. On my dad's side of the family, it is a bunch of computer programmers. So I was able to type before I could write. If we go to the next slide. So these are some of the images that I've generated in the past. How many do you think are AI generated? All of them? Half of them? None of them? Yeah, none of them are AI generated. So I spent a good 2 decades of my life learning my diffusion model, right? Whether it be my computer vision in terms of perception and understanding how to break down images. And as Luna mentioned, I graduated my undergraduate from Ringling College of Art and Design. That was an intentional choice because I originally went to a state school in New Jersey, and they said, hey, I wish we could teach you kind of like the fine art at the level that you want to learn it, but we're just not capable and set up to do that. So I went and searched art schools throughout the country, and Ringling had a figure drawing workshop that happened every day. And I learned from other artists is like if you want to be able to paint on the computer, which is how I learned to paint as well. I didn't start with oils, I didn't start with acrylics, I started with a Wacom tablet when I was 16. So I was really into kind of game art at the time, concept art. So from there, I went and looked at people like Craig Mullins, Goodbrush, who are matte painters and digital artists who could pretty much create whatever they thought. And so from there, I intentionally went to Ringling Art and Design and stayed away from a computer for a good 4 years, learning to draw and paint. Graduated right around the Great Recession, 2008. Okay, I wanted to be an editorial illustrator for the New York Times. Kind of had some awareness that, hey, this is not a viable career path, contrasted with the student loans. So I transitioned, right? So if you go to the next slide. So I taught myself more or less to learn how to program, right? started out in Flash development. I wanted to take my illustrations, my animations, and I wanted to make them interactive. So I leaned on, my father's history of computer technology, and I started to teach myself to code as I was working as a kid's game illustrator. And that kind of at that point too was more or less like I wanted to be more creative as well. I thought just doing 2D images wasn't creative enough. There was no actual interactive experience with the viewer, right, of the image. So I wanted to make my ideas more tangible. So that's why I started to do a lot more prototyping. I used at the time like a Flash, which is a great GUI for artists and animators. But I took that and I went down to a more traditional software development, going to things like object-oriented programming, encapsulation, the difference between languages, and really using that previous skill of learning how to draw and paint and applying now that to computer science. So this is now my agentic side of my brain, previously saw the diffusion side. And now I'm at a point now where you can prompt this sort of work in a matter of hours. It took me decades to learn this, and now you can more or less prompt it. If we go to the next slide. So as mentioned before, I did some museum design exhibition work. You can see the museums at the top. I'm not an architect, I didn't have anything to do with that. But on the bottom there, those are all interactive installations. So this is around like late 2010s, where we were trying to take sort of the experience from your phone or from a desktop and apply it to social settings, right? Cultural institutions were now embracing interactive media more so than they were, say, like artifacts, placards. So the one on the left there, International Spy Museum, we did a lot of WebSocket, web application, multi-user experiences. In the middle is the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience. And you have to remember these institutions, especially the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience, this was really telling when I was installing this exhibit here, was, some of the board members were like, this is the only exposure that some of these students have to this sort of either information or technology in, a 200-mile radius. So that sort of like actual tangible going to a place, cultural institution, and learning something was pretty powerful. On the bottom right, and this is kind of where, we even with the Mississippi Arts Institute, we trained, we had a boat with a projection screen where we trained AI models to do style transfer. This was back in 2019, based off of Mississippi artists. So you'd be in the bayou on a boat, and you'd go down this moving video where we style transferred what those artists, in the artist studio that you learned about. And then this is a Sazerac House, which is a whiskey company. But essentially, you now go up to a digital bartender and ask you, hey, what do you want to drink? And then you choose, and it goes through making what that drink is going to be. So all this culminates into, if you go to the next slide, now at the NYU Tisch Martin Scorsese Virtual Production Center, I teach Intro to Virtual Production class to our Master Professional Studies students, also to the NYU Tisch students, fall and spring. I also teach technical direction and post-production. So I take all these skills from creative technology, from illustration background, and then on top of this, I've worked at companies like Ford, startups, like in the actual product development world. So I always have some sort of grounded aspect to my work that's going to be used by X amount of people. But my sort of career has shifted with the landscape of technology. So, and now I see AI is disrupting that. For someone who spent decades learning, maneuvering, and trying to be at the forefront of technology, that's kind of distilled to anybody can do it. And now I have to even still improve, right? And you kind of have to keep that curiosity. I think we mentioned that previously. For me, AI as a technology now is similar to when I saw the first online encyclopedia image being scanlined onto my uncle's computer back in like the early 90s. I was like, wow, does everybody know about this technology and what it's going to impact? What it's going to mean for the rest of the world? That's how I feel with AI. So now I'm developing that in my workflows, downloading models onto my own GPUs, using those to influence my creative decisions, also to automate the work that I previously would take a lot of technical tasks. I'm able to navigate it a lot quicker than before, especially with all that institutional knowledge about being able to break down an image with my visual perception, and then also break down an interactive with my more logical thinking.
Yeah, for sure. And also wanted to ask, since like AI has kind of intervened in this kind of process, like what are some kind of skills that you think still remain in the process, and like maybe there's like new roles that have emerged, but also like for the other panelists, maybe like what like business models like what is the shift in business model for creators, and how does that help them safeguard from these kind of legal issues?
Well, I think piggybacking on what you said and what Siri said, cultivating your individual identity and becoming exceedingly good at it and refining yourself, also rising to the legal threshold of originality, right? The more you bring of yourself, the more originality and your expression will be unique. Right now, we can feed all these computers all we want, but they're going to spit out the collection of what we fed them. And so they feed us tropes, they feed us things that are not protected in any way or unique in that way, right? They find commonalities and spit it back. So if you have a perspective, if you have your own identity, this cultivation of you is going to become increasingly important. And yes, there are going to be tasks like I was joking before, I'm like, what's going to happen to us? Are we all going to be farmers again? I don't know. But I will be an original and unique farmer at that. But I think that's the way, the human brain, the human ingenuity. If machines could have replaced us, and machines have replaced a great number of workers, let's say in factories. So innovation has not replaced humans completely, right? We still need to program them and tell them what to do, and now when they start talking to each other, God help us all, but you know, until then. But I think that's the way, that you have to work on your craft. I know it's fundamental, but all these fundamental skills we learn at school, learn your craft, learn who you are, have your perspective, have your voice, those are irreplaceable.
Yeah, I would love to try to collect all my thoughts here. I want to push back against a couple of things that have been said a little bit. Like, I think that when we talk about this, like, okay, this is going to replace all illustrators or all people who created in this space, and what does it mean, what craft is left over? I just don't, I really don't think that's true. I think that we sometimes come at it from a perspective that is very, honestly, very privileged and very Western focused. I think about, like, we're talking about traditional production tools and everything that are going to be replaced, for example. Those are incredibly expensive processes that are usually reserved for very specific groups that have access to those processes and to that education. We're seeing that with these technologies, there are a lot of voices in smaller communities that are able to actually speak about things that they usually wouldn't be able to. One of our most active communities that really has like driven a ton of like film processes themselves is in Lagos in Nigeria. We've got also stories of women who are talking about experiences that they've suffered, and they're able to anonymize, right, by creating kind of these stories in the background where they're telling these without having to show their face and everything. It's incredibly empowering that way. If I move away from even the creative space, my sisters and I grew up partially in Berlin. We went to very, very low-income schools that had no funding. My little sister didn't have maths class for a full year. There was no professor. Like, the school just didn't have the funding for it. And she's really, really strong and talented in numbers, but a year without that education is just going to set you back massively. She fought like a crazy person for years to catch up on everything with the help of, at first, YouTube tutorials, things like Khan Academy and everything. But the real shift came afterwards when she was already in college, and she was kind of trying to like upskill from the college that she was at, and was able to work with ChatGPT at that time to kind of like build up on this missing skill set that she had. She's now in one of the best business schools in France and was able to push through that and do data science and work on AI models and in AI teams at companies. I think that it is not as black and white as saying it's going to replace one thing or the other. I think that when we think about maybe the people who have power today, that it could be challenging, we're not thinking about the people who don't have power, that it could be bringing that power to. That is not to say that it's uniquely for good. It's kind of like if you look at any force in the past, like look at the beginning of when photography came in, right? The big fear from painters was this is going to replace painting entirely. And at the beginning, what photography was used for was what painting was massively used for, which was portraiture, right? But it didn't replace painting at all. It allowed painting in a lot of ways to kind of go off on its own and become way more creative and out there. And photography, what it is nowadays, is not restricted to portraiture at all. It is its own massively creative and expansive art flow, right? I think we're going to see a similar attitude around that, but I think that it is, again, a comeback to, this is my strongest feeling around all this, it is what's important through this is your own agency and your own independent thought. And that is like when you get something that's spit out by an AI tool or by ChatGPT or anything, it's actually how you react to it. I think my sister succeeded in that course that she was teaching herself, not because she saw everything that was being spit out to her and was like, great, learned it, like, re-spitting this out. It was like, no, I'm engaging, no, this didn't teach it to me well enough. It's like, you're talking about, you know, the AI writing that you were doing, you changed from, I'm not writing my whole book with AI, I'm getting my paragraph out and then I'm engaging with it, what is good about it, what isn't. And that's what all these tools, like I was mentioning this to you in between the video that I showed you guys that had kind of that like childhood dream-like expansion, right? That wasn't, again, a one-click button, great, got my movie out, I like wrote in my film script about my dreams. With Runway and with other generative tools, you're able to generate 5 to 10 seconds at a time. So then you're getting those seconds, it's like a shot, it's an individual, like it's, you go on set, you're filming something, you're gonna piece that together, edit it, make some coloring, make some effects and everything else. And at the core, it's how you engage with all of that again. And with anything that you're seeing, I think, sorry, this is a long answer, but it's just something that I feel strongly about because I think that I understand the negative feelings that we have towards it because all of us grew up with the internet and social media as our big kind of signs of like how this technology was evolving. And it was promised to us as this thing that was going to be so amazing and save time and make us freer and more efficient. And like, again, for a lot of communities, actually did. It brought a lot of communities out of poverty. It gave voice to a lot of people. But it also meant, honestly, that we're on our screens all the time, that we're reachable all the time. It's exhausting that we're being fed more advertising, more cheaply produced media, stuff that it's really sad. And it has affected our political discourse massively. It's affected the way that we see different communities, the way that we feel anger and empathy and everything else. And so I understand why we're at like a low state of trust towards those things, but I encourage us all to think that it's not as black and white. Again, there were the positives with technology, with social media, and if we don't want the same thing to happen with AI, it's again up to us to have a voice in that creation and to continue to think independently and not just be like, yep, this is what I'm getting from it and this is what I'm going to run with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the best thing you can do might not be to, especially as a student, not to use these tools. That's probably not the right thing to say. But in general, it's like maybe go to the library, maybe go back to fundamentals. When I'm using a tool like this, I know what's happening. I know how that agent is talking to the computer, how that is setting up the network, how that's setting up the code. I know what those machines are doing when they communicate with each other. I know real-time graphics, what the GPUs are doing. On the visual side, I know midground, foreground, background, color theory, composition, all those things. And I don't, unless you put in the work to actually go and understand how humans perceive those things and communicate those things, then you will not, it will always be sort of this black box. AI will always more or less be this black box, right? You know, it goes back to my time in school. I wanted to be a concept artist. I got there, everyone wanted to be a concept artist. I went to the library, some of the, you know, most influential experiences there were from writings of artists that I wasn't necessarily like big fans of, like de Kooning or Ben Shahn, Shape of Content of Art, Kandinsky, Spirituality and Art. They've been talking about these sort of you know, cross-pollination between art, technology, perception. Arnhem, I think it was another German, Art of Visual Perception, really great book too. which goes into how we see, break down shapes, all those sort of things. Essentially, it's the groundwork for computer vision, which is the groundwork for neural networks and diffusion models and what you're using. So if you don't really understand those fundamental blocks, there's always going to be some sort of mystery about what you're using.
I mean, just to piggyback on something you were talking about outside, if you're going to make a good dish, you got to start with the chopping of the onion and chopping of the celery, and you got to know how to chop it, right? And you could use the multi-chopper. That helps, right? It's a little shortcut, but ultimately it requires your taste buds, your interpretation, all the things that you put into whatever you're going to make it yours and make it good for you, for your family, for your friends, whoever you're feeding, right? So life is about that. It's about a collection of experiences, of knowledge, and this is one of the benefits of having a day like today where we can sit and ponder. I mean, how many people don't have the luxury to sit and ponder? So I think we're extremely lucky to have something like this today, to be able to not only feed ourselves knowledge and information, but cultivate perhaps potential outlooks and maybe go forward and create those ethical boundaries and barriers and guardrails that everyone wants. But it all starts in moments like these.
I think as a student, a lot of times the struggle is finding what's valuable to learn in school amidst like all the AI kind of adoption. And I think it kind of goes with like the idea of what work is for us, because I feel like AI has shifted a lot of like what is valuable within the creative process. But at the same time, I still think it kind of like, as what you guys said, it kind of leaves space still for people who do develop these techniques to kind of still have some value, because everyone's so focused on AI. So I do think, like from what you guys are saying, there is a lot more hope in this landscape. And then I think it's the ethical or the policy aspect that can really set the mindset for people. So would you like to kind of explain more of like the policies?
Sure. So now we're going into the things that freak us out, right? Like, was President Obama really talking on that video that we all saw, but it wasn't him? You know, did they just reanimate my grandmother? You know, all those things where you're like, wow. So it really focuses on this name, image, likeness area of law. And I would include voice in it now. And so when I was referring to certain things in the US are federal, some are state, the US has dealt with name, image, likeness rights in two aspects: the right of privacy and the right of publicity. And they've left it up to the states to determine what those rights are, if any. Now, there are 50 states. Some states agree, some do not, some have no protection over this stuff. The ones that are most conservative are, guess what? The ones that make money. So Tennessee, Elvis. Elvis was like, Tennessee was one of the first states because of the Elvis estate. California, New York, not far behind them. So where you've got states that have more income being generated from name, image, likeness, and voice are the ones that are going to be spearheading these efforts in the future. There is a federal claim for misappropriation, but that's not as commonly used. And name, image, likeness, when we're dealing with the right of publicity, it really has to do with the commercial use of one's name, image, likeness, and voice. So for a celebrity, if you know that, you know, Brad Pitt did a commercial or a sponsorship for a watch company and he got paid $10 million, and they use him in another watch company, well, he's got real damages. He knows how much it just cost him. What about us? What's my commercial value? That I'm like social media shy, you're not gonna find anything, right? So what is my name, image, voice, and likeness worth? So we're gonna have to go into those things, and I think the federal government eventually is gonna have to catch up. Now, when I alluded to the EU has actually already enacted that no one is allowed to use another person's name, image, likeness, or voice without their prior authorization, right? Without their consent. Makes abundant sense. And so again, we live in a global world. I don't know any creator who says, nope, I just want my work to be shown in New Jersey. We should never cross a state line. We're never going to cross a country line. We all want it to be global. We are in a global world. It is a global medium. So we will have to rise to the level of those laws. So when we're concerned about being duped or actors being replaced, voiceover artists being replaced, things like that, those are real concerns, and I'm happy that the unions are raising the alarm for that, so we have some better guidelines. But we already have some laws in place. Again, we're ever evolving every day. The law is evolving on this, especially in this country. And there are always going to be countries that look the other way and don't want to police it. They want to police other things. And we see it in science and medicine. Some countries have very strict medical and science ethical guidelines, and others have none, which is terrifying. So we'll figure it out, but there are laws and rules already out there that in a global world we all have to live by, right? And the EU is also they started the whole using person's private information from email, or when you shop online and things like that, what they can do with your private information. And then California caught up. So guess what? 2 days ago or a week ago, California jumped on this bandwagon. So guess who's going to come next? New York and Tennessee are going to be next, and so on and so on. But it is an ever-evolving world. But I'm more concerned with the average person, one, finding out that they've been duped somehow, like in the internet, in the world. And then what is your value as a normal person? Actually, many years ago, I had a client call me up and he said he was driving down Sunset Boulevard and his face was being used for a whiskey ad. And I'm like, are you sure it was you? He's like, it's like 80 feet large. Yes, it's me. I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll look into that. Sure. Okay, I'll get right on that. Not all of us are going to be on the billboard in Sunset Boulevard, so I worry about the every person, the little person, me.
Identity theft will never be the same.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the focus is shifting rapidly away from the deepfakes of like politicians, which was our big fear at the time, in a concerning way, in the sense that I think very quickly we all accepted that we don't really know what truth is. And so that is really the shift that is a little bit worrying, and that comes back, I know I'm a broken record, but again to, when we talk about, yes, first off I agree, it is the everyman, it's like that, but that comes back to personal responsibility. I'm always amazed at how willing people are to share really private aspects of their lives online on social media, and of their children who, for example, have never consented to be online since they were babies and grow up with their entire childhood streamed globally. That for me is a concern, right? If you want to talk about like as a student, what is still worth learning? Oh my God, so much. Like it is I wish every day I could go back to school. I admit, I think it's like such a privilege. It's what you were saying today about being in that space of reflection. Learn all the crafts and everything, because I agree with you, like you interface better with all these models and everything that's going on when you actually know how you're working with them. It comes back again with that independent thought, that self-responsibility when I'm prompting for anything, in like a large language model where I'm just kind of like a ChatGPT or a Claude or anything. I'm always asking for it at the same time. If it's an expertise level, I'm being quite conservative already. I know what I'm kind of getting out of it. If it's something that I don't know, every time like explain it to me, bring it back to me, like put it in this, like learn while you're doing it, so that it's not just spitting out the solution for you. But the main thing that I would continue to say is really, I think the core reason for education, if we're moving out of just like, okay, it's teaching me this textbook or whatever that I could get out from GPT or from whatever else, it's the fact that you get to engage with people who think differently to you, who've grown up in different circumstances. And I think it's something that we don't do enough online, because algorithms have pushed us completely to engage with people who will agree with us. It's what keeps us online, or with people who violently disagree with us also keeps us online. But it doesn't actually, the content that you're seeing is filtered, the comments that are being presented to you are filtered based on previous things that you're seeing. It is not a real discourse. The rooms that you are in, that's, if we talk about the difference between the physical and the digital space, that's the difference. The rooms that you're in, you're actually confronted with people who could think differently to you. And I have a feeling that over the years, I did gap between my bachelor's and my master's, and I remember going back to school. Obviously, it's a different school, also everything, but the desire of people to engage with people who thought differently to themselves had diminished so much. There was this huge emphasis on like, well, I want to feel safe, and I don't want to go into this, and I don't feel comfortable talking about this, and I get it, and I think that respect is a really important piece in all this, but it is a privilege to hear from somebody who disagrees with you, because you get to re-challenge your own arguments, and either you come out of it being convinced again, you're like, yep, actually what I thought is absolutely right, and I feel stronger about this, and I was able to re-verbalize this, or I heard a challenge, okay, maybe what I thought wasn't right, maybe I can like have a cross blend and a cross color of this conversation that I had and improve my own intellect, my creative practice, anything else. That's how we build a better and a more ethical society.
I think this is a big topic. We're veering off topic, but this notion, and art, right? Well, I'll bring it back to art, which really is the umbrella under which we sit. I'm not the first to come up with this definition, right? But art should be something that moves you. It moves the needle of emotion. Whether you hate it or you love it, it moved the needle. And that is good art. Not whether you like it, not whether your friends like it, not whether this notion of tolerance. We should feel uncomfortable. We should place ourselves in moments of uncomfortability. It's the only way we grow. If we sit there with people who only say yes to us, we're not growing. So I think tolerance has gone by the wayside because of our social media and our online, these filters that just propagate things that make us feel validated, but is it really validation or is it something fake, which I think it is. So I think it's really important. And again, it's the fundamentals. It's what is art? How do you create it? Ultimately, it's the human soul and the human heart that creates art. Because only a human can know what moves another human. A computer can never know what moves another human. And as empathetic as they are, they're never going to be us. They're never going to have that emotional intelligence. You know, sometimes I'm famous for saying to someone, I think you might be missing a chip, right? They are permanently missing a chip. So, I think when we're analyzing what we're doing, let's just go to the core concepts. You can't write a book without the alphabet, without having your swirly Q's and your Y's and all those. So just go back to the basics. When you're feeling lost, when you're feeling like the world is out of your control, yes, we're all feeling lost, we're all feeling out of control. But go back to your basics and then challenge what you've learned, challenge what you believe. Because reading, going to the library, going to exhibits, opening your eyes to things, again, they don't have to be things you like. They have to be things that move you.
Yeah, I think we talk about AI slop a lot. It's where we start to notice the algorithms. Our perception is becoming heightened visually, what we see. I think it's also happening politically too, movements-wise. Like we can sense the algorithm is moving in a way. There's some sort of breakthrough, I think, happening there. Maybe not so much AI, but as all these systems become intertwined and interconnected, all based off of mathematics, or I might disagree, you can write a book with numbers because that's kind of how AI
Yeah, technology.
Yeah, they convert the words to vectors and then use vectors to write the books. So, I've always theorized that like our awareness will become heightened. The dime a dozen social media content will not elicit that dopamine response. Real human connection will. You start to see more mistakes, like human error. I think it's going to become like more of a signature or thumbprint, because eventually you're going to try to trick the systems. That's what you're trying to do in prompt engineering a little bit. I've read recently, it's inoculation is a new method to get AI agents to talk more honestly to you. You tell it to cheat first because it's first to you. These are more based off of large language models. There's a difference between diffusion models and RNN neural networks. But if you start to, it's going to automatically try to find the least path of resistance, whether or not that's truthful or not. So if you start out by saying, hey, that's cheating, then eventually it almost corrects itself to give you more of a correct answer. So those sort of I don't know, inner ways of manipulating systems, I think are newfound in a way, which is pretty interesting and exciting, and it also, you know, heightens your self-awareness. It's like, how do I think, right? Like, how do I approach my perceptions? If an AI model perceives this way, like if we're sort of trained in, you know, capitalist society to produce and be productive, there's a lot of self-reflection that can happen there, especially when you start to download different models and see which ones are doing. You know, we talk about these in sort of big conglomerate, you know, technology companies, but essentially they're training and building a model and having that run on GPUs and then receiving the answer. It's not necessarily always OpenAI or you know, Claude. You can go to Quen, or like I said earlier, models that are trained on open source software or, you know, public works. So that's where I think diving deeper into the tech. You have a really great, I think, slide and quote where it says like AI is a catch-all, and I really believe AI is kind of a catch-all for our anxiety in terms of living in the society that we're in right now, and it's an easy sort of scapegoat, especially if you don't understand what's happening underneath. So my hope is that content changes, right? Like we get to more immersive experiences, theatrical, like technology we even do in virtual production can now be applied to theater, live events. So that sort of human connection, I think, is going to continue that thread. And then the rest of it will just be generated slop, like where you might have, you know, people still buying 10,000 illustrations, but you have 100 times as many people being illustrators now. So.
Yeah, thank you for all these thoughts. I just hope like new startup, when they want to build something, first ask creators, lots of people and people from different background who has expertise in it, build those chips together and then start something. Like think before and then do. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna throw it back to you as a question because I do think that creative technology companies are engaging in that way. I think it'll depend which ones, but I think, so for example, I can speak for Runway. I mentioned that our 3 founders met at ITP, that they all have creative backgrounds. Like everyone who works in the company has that mixed creative tech background, but they also work massively with creatives to develop the tools, and it is completely core to the way that the models are being built. And I think that the reason that the model has become so popular is like we didn't spend $1 on marketing until this year, and it was all organic, and that was because it was built for creatives in mind.
Can you play this is a great segue. Thanks.
This one.
So yeah, this is March 2020, I believe. So this is when I was working at Facebook a little bit, but I essentially always wanted to turn my sketches to life. So this is the early iteration of Runway, and you can start to combine different models. So there I was more or less using facial tracking for the webcam, and then applying that to a sketch I had just drawn. Right? This was kind of mind-blowing to me at the time, even though now it's very, very rudimentary compared to the AI models. But this got on Twitter, and then Cristobal from Runway saw it and reached out and asked if we could have a 30-minute conversation, because he wanted to understand how the artist used the tools. And you know, I gave him my feedback, and it'd be great if you could email me back one day, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, in general, like, yeah, this is more about the creative curiosity from a creative technologist with an artistic background, and then also what you were mentioning, creative technology companies, really forging that path. Like, it's not like they're not listening to creatives and how they're using the product. I think it's integral, and why people are using it more and more, adopting it more and more.
By the way, I'll add to that very quickly. You have a choice always, right? It's like earlier you were saying that this has made you want to go back more to physical artwork. Amazing, do it. You know, like for me also, loved Instagram for a long time. I take a lot of photos, I take a lot of film photos, and I really loved it as a medium to share that, but also discover new photographers. But as Instagram developed, it was a lot more advertising, and it was a lot of stuff that I was just like, wow, I'm actually spending so much time just on this app and consuming crap, and it's making me feel really bad about myself. And I deleted the app, and I feel great. And I was just like, it just was a decision for me to be like, okay, well, this is now the negatives have outweighed the positives that exist on this platform.